Get started. Again, welcome everybody to the Roar Conference. I know it is not what we thought it was going to be. We thought we were going to be in person to be able to hug and love up on you. However, we are in a pandemic still. So we are bringing you live here with us on Zoom today. My name is Anicia Williams. I am the Chief Client and Communications Officer for Solve Innovation Group. Throughout my career, I have rightfully taken my seat at the table to speak on the needs for diversity and inclusion across all different sectors. This is why we're here today at the Roar Conference to talk about that, to talk about leadership and how to do it inside a pandemic. I would be remiss not to mention the unrest that's happening right now in our country and the things that we can do to be able to make things a little bit better. You often hear people say, like, this is not us, this is not who we are. Well, truth moment, this is who we are. So what I would definitely recommend during this time is, number one, listen. Number two, take inventory of your own house, at your job, your friends, inside of your house. And then three, take some action to do something. Right now, as you can see, people are protesting all across the country. It's no longer lip service. It's about doing something and meaning it, and also putting resources and financing to where you can actually do something and other people around to affect change as well. I want to commend Josefina Bonilla. We'll introduce her in a few minutes, for actually assembling a great group of diverse women who are of all ages, of all shades of color, as well, and in different levels in their career. So I want to commend her for that. So now I am going to introduce our CEO of Roar Conference, Miss Josefina Bonilla. She's the founder of Right Media Inc. and the author of Roar If You Have to, the foundation portion of this conference. So I am going to turn it over to her, and I will be right back.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anicia, and thank you so much for emceeing this great event. It's a long time in coming. As you commented, we were initially going to have a live event. However, with everything going on, but we still wanted to have it. We wanted to engage people. We wanted a setting so we can aspire to be something. We can inspire others in what they want to be. And in doing that, we can motivate folks to change, to step up to who they are. And I thought that this was a great opportunity. Thank you everyone for joining us. Just wanted to give you a heads up, we are experiencing a little difficulty in terms of being able to share this on Facebook Live. Of course, we are live now. We have about 50 people that are on with us in addition to us, and you'll see people coming in and out throughout the day. We're together from 12 to 3. And let me step back. When I wrote Roar If You Have to, I wanted to, I was just leaving Color Magazine. I was starting a new company. And as I was packing up my boxes from Color, I came across a speech that I had written several years before. And it was the tenets that I held in terms of success, in terms of leadership. And as I thought about the people that really, for me, these tenets resonated. When I thought of them, I thought about these folks. And those are the leaders that are featured here, the leaders that are speaking with you today. And so again, welcome. And I'm gonna give it back to Anicia.
Awesome.
Anicia.
Cool beans. So we are going to go ahead and jump in and get started. And we are going to get started with Dr. Bevery Edgehill. Dr. Bevery Edgehill has committed her career to being a catalyst for organizational and individual development and change. As an accomplished organizational As an accomplished organizational development advisor, she guides leaders and their teams into achieving alignment between strategy, organizational priorities, and individual work performance. So, guys, if we can give a good round welcome to Dr. Bevery Edgehill.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. And Josefina, thank you for convening us all in spite of the pandemic in this virtual environment so that we could engage in conversation and support one another as we continue to think about how best we can grow and advance our careers and make a difference in today's environment. So I was asked to kick us off and talk about the topic courage. Courage as a word that I kind of resonate with. And, you know, I thought it might be interesting to start with a kind of classic definition of the word courage. And as I looked it up this morning, it's defined as both the mental and moral strength to venture forth despite fear or difficulty. Let me repeat that. Courage is defined as both the mental and moral strength, having both the mental and moral strength to venture forward, and might I add, into unknown territory. It doesn't require mental or moral strength to venture into a space that you are familiar with. It does require such if you're venturing forward in a space that you're unfamiliar with. And so given all that's happening in our world today, whether you're grappling with the pandemic and the implications of working remotely, or whether you're grappling with the recent and the current unrest in our country, looking face to face at issues around racism, there requires some courage when it comes to advancing and thinking about one's career. And so I'd like to take a moment and reflect on research that I've been collecting or conducting, if you will, for the past 15 plus years, looking very specifically at how women who are committed to making a difference through their vocation, namely their career, how they learn to have career success, essentially. I've been very curious about that. And frankly, my research suggests that much of what they shared would equal being courageous, namely having the moral and mental strength to venture forth and to pursue their desired interest. And so very specifically, I'd like to share some of the results from the finding and results that I am fortunate enough to continue to corroborate, whether it is through formal means or informal means. And these women tend to, time and time again, talk about the ways they are courageous in the following. First, they very specifically outline and identify the notion of knowing your mindset, knowing how you're showing up based on how you think and what you bring to the table. And I'm going to come back to this as a big, bold idea in a moment to underscore it as it relates to this idea of courage and being courageous. The second courageous move or step that women who are committed to their careers and ultimately making a difference in the world is focusing on what we often refer to as going from strength to strength. And it presumes in that regard that they are clear about what their unique strengths are. And again, that is, you know, if we had more time, I'd go into that in more detail. The third courageous step that these women engage with is this notion of leveraging what I refer to as disorienting moments, leveraging disorienting moments. Because here's the deal. As we venture into the unknown, as we deploy our mental and moral strength to venture into places that are unknown to us, we're going to very likely meet with, bump into, be faced with disorienting times where we might have set out to accomplish A, B, C and be faced with D, E, F. And how do you leverage that versus collapsing under the pressure thereof? The fourth thing that these women have reported repeatedly doing is leveraging their network, or rather building a network is more appropriately said. And I like to pause here and point that the notion of building a network is really under the auspices or reference to as a noun, if you will, a person, place, or thing, versus as a verb, which is I went to an event last night to do networking. Two separate scenarios. A network as something that enables you to move forward in this place of the unknown, moves forward to increase your confidence as you're courageous. And then finally, these women have reported time and time again that it's important to keep perspective, that at the end of the day, it really is about, who we are as humans and how we connect with ourselves and others. So to further take this idea of what it means to be courageous and how we might be courageous in these times, I want to just zero in on the very first idea here, which is to know your mindset. And, the reference to the idea of knowing your mindset is frankly a bit abstract. When you think of the word mindset, what does that mean? It's difficult to say that we see one's mindset in our day-to-day, but we do see one's mindset, because if we have the courage to lean into and to even explore what that idea might mean, we will come to see that we all hold a set of beliefs, and that beliefs about ourselves and about others in our current circumstance that lead to our mindset. And it's really about understanding, it's about having the courage, again, the moral and mental strength to look at the truth about those beliefs, and not to just say on the surface, perhaps, my objective is to achieve this particular career goal, or to set a goal of, let's just say, get my finances in order, or, find the love of my life, or to be promoted in a current situation, or to start my own business. That's kind of a surface detail. And, oftentimes people will say, well, I do vision boards, and I envision and I affirm every morning that I'm successful. And those things are important and they help to some extent. But at the end of the day, our mindset, which is undergirded, it's girded by our conscious and unconscious awareness of who we are, is what really matters. In my own personal practice and in working with others, I have come to a very strong conclusion that the work of career success, if you will, is really an inside job. And if we are not paying attention to or aware of the behaviors, or rather the beliefs that we are carrying that really shape our mindset, then we're at a loss. So let me give you some examples. Let's say, for example, we are, as I am, a first-generation college graduate. And growing up, we heard the family message of you've got to be twice as hard, you've got to work twice as hard, you've got to be twice as good to be successful at whatever you're endeavoring. And that coaching and that loving guidance was given to us for our entire developmental time. That is deeply embedded in who we are. And while we might not be walking around in our day-to-day saying we've got to be twice as good or twice as hard, trust me, your mindset is manifesting itself perhaps as being, the one that works, that goes beyond, above and beyond, that works, more hours than perhaps it's humanly necessary. And it's almost like chasing, what is that expression, the donkey with the carrot. You're never going to ever get the carrot, because it's always about, well, I did this, but it's got to be twice as good. And I did this, and I've got to be twice as good. And, one of the things that I have observed, and this isn't my research, but I've observed over the years, is that women of color tend to be more susceptible to illness, to mental stress and pressures because of what we put on ourselves, which might be attributed to these underlying beliefs about ourselves that we have forgotten about, but that absolutely inform our mindset. And sometimes the positive nature of those beliefs can have a shadow effect, meaning that I have to work twice as hard because I'm not good enough. And the I'm not good enough will absolutely undermine what it is you're trying to do on the outside. So sometimes I also observe that there's this kind of push-pull in terms of the desire to achieve a particular goal, and then the pull being these mindsets, or rather the behaviors, or rather beliefs underneath the mindset that undermine what it is we're trying to do. I remembered talking with someone once, and she said to me when she was growing up, she was a Latina, she is a Latina woman, and she was growing up in a community of all whites, and they lived in a fancy apartment building. And her mother told both her and her sister that when you get on the elevator, you don't make eye contact with the other people on the elevator, and you stay silent. And they lived on the 21st floor in this building. And so they would get on the elevator and stand close to their mother and go to the 21st floor before they could speak. And then they'd get off the elevator and, laugh and do what young children do. Now, this woman who was a friend, we're talking 40, 50 years, no, probably more like 40 years later. And she said she had observed, she's overcome this because she had the courage, again, the moral and mental strength to go deep and look at this. But she realized that there were moments in her career where she didn't feel confident speaking in meetings. And the coaching at that point had been, well, your Myers-Briggs says ABC, and maybe you could do XYZ. And it wasn't until she had the courage to go deep and look at the beliefs that she realized she was still that little girl on the elevator waiting for her floor to come before she could just be herself. And that's an example to me of having the courage to look underneath the intention of wanting to show up in the fullness of who you are, but the underlying belief that creates this kind of dichotomy and will undermine every step that you take. So the bottom line here is that when we talk about courage, courage is not abstract, it's very tangible. And again, my research suggests that the women who were able to push through barriers, overcome challenges, pursue their goals and objectives, reach their version of the finish line, are those women who were able to deploy more than a fair amount of moral and mental strength to pursue, or rather to venture into places that were unknown. And they were willing to say in their practice and in their approach that it was way more than simply affirming an objective, way more than simply setting an intention. But they knew they needed to pause at some point and go deep and ask themselves what might be seen, felt like, or viewed as an uncomfortable question, but to say, what is it that I'm holding as true about me that's getting in the way of what I'm wanting to experience? So with that, I'm going to pause. I was asked to just make some brief comments, and then I think we're going to have a time for Q&A. Is that correct?
Yes, so we're opening it up right now. This is Josefina for questions from the audience. So if you have questions, I encourage you to ask now. We have roughly around 7 minutes, but in the meantime, Bev, if you want to continue, we can do that. Questions, as soon as they come up, we'll be able to.
Sure, that's fine. So again, the notion of being courageous and having courage. Again, that's what I was asked to talk about. And I quickly referenced kind of the 5 courageous steps. The first one I referenced was knowing your mindset. I'm going to move on to the second one, which is going from strength to strength. And again, it takes courage, again, the mental and moral strength to acknowledge your unique talents and abilities. I believe personally that we all have been blessed and endowed with unique talents and abilities. And the extent to which we can see them and acknowledge them and be open to how to leverage them in our day-to-day being is the extent to which we will have the kind of career experience and perhaps even the life experience that we desire, versus only looking at what's wrong. You know, how might I get better? Again, that ties to, this is why I started with this idea of knowing your mindset. So if we're only looking at if we're only looking at ourselves as being half full and figuring out, how do I get better? Gosh, maybe I'll go back to school and get another degree, or maybe I'll quit my current job and get a different job because that will make me better. Or maybe I'll join this club because that will make me better, et cetera, et cetera. We are missing likely the brilliance and uniqueness of our own strength, going from strength to strength. And then very quickly, I'll go on and reference the third one, as I mentioned before, which is leveraging disorienting moments. A disorienting moment is what happens to us when we are figuratively knocked off our game, or it might even be literal. I mean, if you've had a financial scenario, that will knock you off your game. If you're finding you have to file bankruptcy or you lose your job, or that will knock you off your game, and it's disorienting. And part of what's disorienting is that it may represent a conflict to your own personal values, right? Or it might be disorienting because it takes you off this pedestal of where you placed your own self of a particular lifestyle, or who you know or who you don't know. And to be disoriented is to forget kind of your identity. I often very quickly reference, if you happen to ever watch what I believe is one of the most violent sports, boxing, you'll note that when people are, really hit hard, they have a look on their face where they're dazed. You can tell they don't even know where they are, who they are. And sometimes when we have disorienting moments in the workplace, for example, maybe being passed over for a promotion, or being in a meeting and hearing someone say something that you can't believe they just said, or being in a meeting where maybe your idea was put forward and it was overlooked, all those things can create disorientation. And the way to leverage that is to step back and say, what might I learn about myself? What might I learn about how I could have approached it differently? Or what I might say to someone else about this given situation. Let me pause and see if there are any questions now.
We have a couple of questions here. One of them is from Dr. Smith. Dr. Barbara Smith wants to know, you mentioned shadow effect as something that undermines what you want to do. Can't the shadow effect be used as a motivator as well? That's the first question.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it certainly can. For anyone that wants to learn more about the shadow, I would encourage you to read a very good book, by Deborah Ford. But it certainly can, I believe, only if you're aware of what it is. I mean, the shadow effect will undermine you if you don't know what it is. But if you're willing to take a look, that's where the courage comes in, then you can use it to your advantage. Absolutely, you can. Great question. Thank you.
The second question is, do you have to have a significant emotional event to gain that courage to go deeper? That's from Yvonne Alvario.
Oh, I love that question. Do you have to have a significant emotional event? I think the answer to that is no. And I would say no, and maybe it depends. So no, it depends. I'll start with it depends. It depends on one's current level of emotional intelligence, right? Emotional intelligence very quickly has to do with your sensitivity and awareness and knowledge of self, your sensitivity and knowledge and awareness of you in relation to others, and then you in relation to the broader system. So if you're the kind of person that is oriented that way, you don't have, I don't believe you have to have a major life experience to be reflective and benefit from the little disorientations that happen from time to time. And there are people, and this isn't a criticism or judgment, who have a different level of emotional intelligence or awareness. And sometimes life has to, to use the proverbial reference, knock them off their feet for them to say, oh gosh, what is this really about? And this is where it's important to have a network, right? Of people that can help you, people that love you, people that are concerned, people that can guide, your mentors, your sponsors, because they will be the ones that say, you may be laying on your back, you can absolutely get up, but here's what you might consider doing the next time you do.
We have another question that has come in. How do you stay courageous among senior executives?
Yes, gosh, that's a whole big conversation. And I would say it starts with the mindset of how you're positioning yourself to that person or those people. In other words, this is why, for me, this notion of understanding your underlying beliefs is so critical. Because if you have an unknown to you belief that there is power in hierarchy and you have a place in that hierarchy, then there is going to create this discomfort around being with senior executives. If, in fact, you have an orientation that suggests I should be respectful to all people, and my point of view is as valuable as someone else's, then I will look for the best way to share my point of view with this person that happens to be in a position of greater responsibility than me. But again, if it's unknown to us, if our belief that I could never speak to that person because they're on the top of the heap, if that's an unknown belief, then it's going to undermine your ability to pursue what it is you want to do.
Yeah. And our last question before we wrap up, have you encountered any negative responses and or retaliation at work when you've spoken up?
Well, the inauthentic short answer would be no. And since I'm not inauthentic, but I don't have a lot of time, I would say absolutely. Have I been called or referred to as an angry Black woman?
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah. Have I been, taken aside to give feedback and coaching about how I might have handled that situation differently? Absolutely. Have I been passed over for opportunities? Absolutely. And the list goes on and on. And the thing that I know has supported me and enabled me to, again, have the moral and mental strength to get through and over is the fourth courageous tip I referenced, which is to have a network, right? I have a very strong network. So as I might have been disoriented, as I might have lost my way by focusing on myself as a glass being half empty instead of half full, I've had a network of people that have pulled me together, that have helped me to know that what just happened may have happened to me, but isn't me, right? The feedback, the mistake, the misstep, my making a 2, a 10 might have happened, but it's not me. And that's why this is not a solo act. Again, when I talk or use the word courage, I'm not talking about being that lone kind of person that goes out there to, conquer the world. You have to have kind of your pack, your buddies, and folks that are going to give it to you straight. So, and then finally, and I know we have to wrap up here, for me, the fifth courageous tip is perhaps the most important, which is this notion of keeping perspective. It's not the end of, we are constructed, my faith guides my work and who I am also, and we're constructed in the image and likeness of a higher power, whatever you want to call it, God, divine feminine, life, the universe, but a much higher power. So, if something happens around our work experience, it is not the end of the world. It is not. It's one thing in a much bigger tapestry of who we are and how we're being utilized in the bigger scheme of things. So the answer is yes. and I wish I had time to go into more detail, but I'm so honored to have the opportunity to hopefully inspire you to think about all of this work in a much broader way. And Josefina, I admire your leadership. You've been such an important person in my life, in my daughter's life. I entrusted you as one of her mentors. And just this whole notion of you being very courageous to step out on your dreams is such an inspiration. So thank you all for the time this afternoon.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so very much, Dr. Edgehill. That was certainly enlightening. Of course, I can definitely remember times in my career where, you know, things have happened from retaliation, and I left thinking like, you know, am I really, you know, good? Like, am I really, you know, do I really know my stuff? Like, is it something? And it does. It does mess with you. And as a African-American woman in corporate, it's something that you have to deal with on a consistent basis. And I think it's something that just never stops. And going into that, we're going to be talking to Kip Hollister about what you can do inside of the workplace to be able to get your equilibrium back, if you will, when things like that sort of happens. So I'm going to introduce her right now. She is the CEO and founder of Hollister Staffing and Hollister Institute. And like I said, she helps companies integrate mindfulness and wellness into their core practices, which I think, given the climate that we're in right now, it is so desperately needed because your coworkers are not okay. Anybody that says that they are okay right now, I don't know how, but they aren't okay. And so she's going to talk to us about some things that you can do as someone of leadership who has control over, you know, what your company can do as far as leadership from an entrepreneur standpoint as well, what you can do to keep your spirits high and things of that nature as we go through, you know, what we're going through right now in the country. So I am going to turn this over to Kip Hollister, and she's going to give us some tips.
Can you hear me? Yes? Great, great. Big shout out to you, Josefina, my heart. I'm actually holding a heart for this community coming together. I'm so proud of you, Josefina. And I just want to start by sharing that, Josefina, you and I met ages ago in my office at 75 State Street. And this was before any of this went on. And we connected at a soul level. And the love you've given to me, unconditional love to kind of where we were strangers and now we're not, I just really appreciate. And I'm just glad we are all here together. So, oh my gosh, Beverly, what you just said, I just had chills through my whole body, because when I think about myself and I think about the Institute and I think about this pandemic that we're in right now, we're all suffering, right? We are all suffering. And we can't control our outer state. We just can't. But what we can control is our inner state. And our inner state comes from our thoughts. And here's the wonderful thing about our thoughts. Our thoughts are not real. So what Beverly was just talking about is everything we teach at the Hollister Institute, because your thoughts repeated come and turn into what I call a belief system, which she just talked about. And we then live out of those belief systems as if they are real. The opportunity we have is to look at our thinking and tap into our emotions. And right now, our emotions are so raw, all of us. And so as leaders, we have this opportunity to step in, to lean in, and I like to say to be with one another. And all of the emotions are welcome, right? I mean, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of rage. Look at this book, it's called Roar. And as we surrender to allowing our emotions to be present, what happens is we can actually transmute the lower frequencies of energy, because leadership is about energy. And energy is matter, and matter is energy. And one of the things that I had the joy of doing was going out to the Deepak Chopra Center when I turned 50, and I got trained in meditation. And so for me, I've always been a meditator, but I wanted to get better at it. And by the way, there's no getting better at meditation, which is just so funny. You know, Beverly talked about that, like all of us, like, oh, I gotta be enough. I gotta be more. I gotta do this. I gotta go get my PhD. Yeah, no. We have got to commit to being human, being loving, being kind, being non-judgmental, and being a community together. My doorway, my pathway in being a minister's child was meditation, because I was always this soul-seeking kid, always left out, always feeling not enough, always feeling unworthy. And what I discovered when I saw that my thoughts weren't real is that going into my mind alone is a very dangerous place to go, because we might never come out. But the key was, I think, in that our thoughts aren't real, I can start shifting my thinking and align the emotions. And to Beverly's point, we do have to pull the root up to looking at our belief systems, because the belief systems are where we get to shift. Meditation gives us this opportunity to put our thoughts on a shelf. So one of the things about meditation is that your thoughts are part of the experience. So sometimes a lot of type A people will say to me, oh, Kip, I can't meditate, I'm type A. My thoughts never will go off. And I say, your thoughts aren't supposed to go off. Point 2 to meditation is that literally 10 minutes a day of meditation can change the neurocircuitry to your brain, and new superhighways to the brain get created that actually allow you to get into that stillness place where only love lives, and then love can lead. And so at the Institute, we always have this phrase that you can't walk towards your greatness. You can only walk away. Because each one of us on this call today are worthy beyond measure. We were born in our worthiness, and the magic of life is believing in ourselves first and foremost. And to Beverly's point, it takes courage. It takes courage to self-introspect. It takes courage to look at our assumptions, some being false, and being able to lean in. And we can make anything happen, anything, as long as we're tuned inward at some self-reflection. And in business, we've been forced into emotional intelligence space, right? Because we're all in this great fear, and all of the emotions now are being brought into the boardrooms. They are actually, everyone is saying, how do we tend to well-being? So the gift I wanted to give all of you right now is just guiding you through a brief meditation. And I'd love to, the chat, I don't know, if anyone has never meditated before, just kind of like let me know, so that I can work with you. And the other thing I would love for you to do, if you can in the chat, is just write right now, before we go in, where's your emotion right now? What are you feeling? Are you sad? Are you depressed? Are you overwhelmed? Are you zoomed out? So that I can bring that into the meditation. And maybe I can't see that, but do it for yourself anyway, because I want to show you the before and after. Okay, so really what we're doing here is, this is a tool that allows you to shift your current emotional state. And it's the greatest gift. And I teach this, you're all welcome. I do it every Thursday at 10 a.m. to the whole community. But the people that I work with and the companies that I work with, they're shifting and they're transforming. So
Kip, to help you
yes.
before you go in,
Yes.
we've gotten folks that they are frustrated and impatient.
Oh, good.
I'm in a calming state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmed with everything going on,
Mm-hmm.
profound exhaustion,
Oh, I so get it.
tense.
Yeah.
Those are some of the things that are coming
Good.
in from
Good.
people.
Okay. So here's my advice right now. Be in what you're in. Don't judge yourself. Be in that emotion. You might even have tears come up. Just let it be. Because here's the thing. The connection, the interconnection, the power of uniting as human beings right now on this call, being a collective consciousness in the space of compassion, love, gratitude, amidst the fears, the stress, the worry, the overwhelm. We're going to transmute that in around 8 minutes. We're going to transmute that lower frequency energy and just bring you up into a loving, heart-filled space. That's the intention. And there's power in the collective consciousness that we're going to do right now. So be in that emotion, okay? And here's what I want to do. And you can take your cameras off or you can keep them on. I'm going to invite you to gently close your eyes. And let's begin by taking a few deep cleansing breaths in through your nose, gently exhaling through your mouth. Couple more at your own pace, just observing your stomach expand, the air moving up through your nose, gently exhaling through your mouth. And now return to your normal way of breathing. Noticing your thoughts as they're part of the experience. And noticing your emotions. Just allowing yourself to be in this moment. And in this moment, there's nothing wrong. And you are worthy beyond measure. Now bring your attention to the base of your spine. And draw an imaginary rod that runs from the base of your spine down into the center of the Earth's vortex. And just allow yourself to take a couple of breaths down there with Mother Earth. Taking in that foundational energy, being with the breath. And on your next inhale, I want you to intentionally breathe that energy all the way up through your entire body and out through the crown of your head. It's as if this energy is moving through you and stretching you like a tall oak tree, expanding into the sky. And now allow and imagine this white ball of energy cascading down from the sky, and allow that energy to move down through the crown of your head. Moving down, meeting that earth energy on the inhale and connecting right around the heart in the middle of your chest. And just breathe in this heart energy of compassion and love. And on the next inhale, just intentionally go deeper into the heart, allowing your heart to be open. And on the next inhale, breathe that earth energy in And extend that heart energy out to every person in this conference, just by setting this intention. And on the next inhale, go deeper into the heart and send that loving energy, healing energy out to the world, to all of humanity. Bringing your awareness back into the heart, breathing in this energy of love and allowing it to flow through you and to you. Coming into your heart center, back into your being in this moment. Take a couple of deep cleansing breaths, wiggling your fingers, your toes, maybe moving your head side to side, acknowledging yourself for being love, being lovable, and being loving. And as it is, so shall it be. And when you feel ready, you may gently open your eyes. And if you can right now, bring your hands together and really pull that energy towards your heart and ground this by taking a few deep breaths, grounding the energy, the intentions, and the love. So, I would love to now know for you to tap into how you're feeling now. What's coming up? What emotions coming up for you now? And Anise, yeah, I'd love for you to, because I don't have the power over here, so you do, but I'd love to hear if there's a contrast, if it's the same, what has transpired for you. And then I can also, take any questions, comments, and then I can leave you with a couple other tools just at the end of this that you can do for really relieving stress.
Absolutely. So what I am seeing is, dear Kip, that was amazing. It was awesome. I'm seeing mellow. I'm seeing relaxed. Someone said, I felt myself gasping for breath at first, but now I'm more relaxed.
Good. Okay. So that gasping for breath is a real feeling. And to whomever said that, I love that you stayed with it, because we needed to get you moved through the anxiety. That's that external circumstances and conditions that we can't control. And then when you were with your breathing, you're able to move into this stillness, which is that space between your thoughts. And that gives you a sense of, I can, Beverly just talked about courageousness. And mindset, so this is a tool that you can use for mindset. I want to say one other thing, that if you put your, so here's what happens when we're in stress. When we're in stress, literally 80% of the blood flow to the brain shuts off. 80%. So here's a little something you can do in the office, at home, wherever. Put your right hand on your forehead and put your left hand behind your neck. And I want you to push your hands into one another, and you can close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths as you're pushing them towards each other.
And that's something that you can do and carry throughout the day, right?
You can carry throughout the day. And now I want you to just check, did you sense a difference? Because what we're doing is we're pattern interrupting the stress reaction that we all get. And so that's just a tip for you that you can also use. Did you feel it, Phyllis? Yeah, it really works. I mean, I kind of thinking, wait, does this work? But every time I do it, I'm like, oh, okay. I fed my brain.
Yeah. One of our folks just says, it gives yourself permission to slow down. You will create an opening to be courageous and go deep to underneath what's happening, your mindset, to see the real reason for being upset or off your game. They said, thanks so very much. It spoke to my heart and soul. They said, I felt a butterfly in the heart space after doing that. Very, very powerful.
Good, right. We forget about self-care. And in all of the Institute programs that I'm running and leading, which is about real leadership and having real conversations, people are forgetting about their own selves. And we are all, as women, we're caregivers, we fix it, we take care of, and our energy goes out, but we need to bring the energy in so we can give more. And so I would encourage all of you, in just closing, to make a conscious choice each day to take 5 or 10 minutes. Like if you don't choose meditation, you could choose a silent walk, you can journal, but that 5 to 10 minutes of self-care, of being quiet, will get your energy in a place where you can actually deliver at higher levels. And we're worthy, right? We're worthy. You're worthy enough. So we really have to be mindful to take care of ourselves so that we can love. So go let love lead is my belief and my action.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. That was amazing. That was just very soothing as well to a lot of folks. That's what I'm seeing. Everyone loved it. So thank you so very much for sharing your gift and your experience and bringing this to us, because we need this. We are about to be in the networking phase of our conference before we move on to Dr. Lisa Coleman. So we have about, I say about a good, about 20 minutes or so to do some networking. So that allows our panelists to also network with some folks in addition to attendees. So if you have any questions, if you have anything pressing or anything like that or what have you, definitely there is a box for questions for Q&A, so definitely put those in there so I can see them as well. But please network with each other. If you need to grab something, grab some tea, whatever have you. But we're gonna take like I said, just about 20 minutes or so that folks are able to just network and just chat and talk with folks. I believe we have some new folks here that are on the screen, but we're all open. Please put your LinkedIn information, your social media information inside of the chat or even on the Q&A. So that we can just all share here. So again, if you have any questions or anything, this is now the time. And then at about 1:20, I will wrap up the networking session so that we can get right back into our big panel that we're gonna have that's gonna be moderated by Dr. Lisa Coleman.
Anicia, that was amazing. It was really powerful in the tail end of Beverly's um, comments on courage to, particularly now, how what things are going on in society with Black Lives Matter, the importance of companies stepping forward. That was impactful for me.
Yeah, I think, you know, as you see a lot of things happening with Black Lives Matter, you see companies stepping up to donate and things of that nature. Like, it's not, and Lord knows I applaud the donations and them actually doing something, but it's not just a one-time thing. And that's what I want to make clear. And I think a lot of folks who are out there marching and protesting, peaceful protesting, is that, you know, this situation, unfortunately, it got to this point to where even in the pandemic during COVID, people are still out there risking their lives to fight for the things that we should not even have to fight for, which is the decency and equality for everyone. So if you are at a company and you are in D&I, or if you are the HR person, if you are in a leadership type like person, what we want to see is systematic change that's going to happen. We want to see what is your plan going forward versus, you know, just donating this $10 million one time or this $1 million one time. What is the next steps to that, and how can we start to look at things that will sustain inside of, you know, your workplaces? And that is so important, and that's why people are continuing, even though you know, this came out of the gentleman being shot, and you know, now they are arrested. I think one came out for bail today, and people thought, okay, well, once they get arrested, like, then the process is going to stop. And I'm just like, no, that's not going to happen. So again, what can we do to make sure that this isn't a one-time thing? What can we do to make sure that our folks in our workplace feel like it's an inclusive place that they can come to work and to be themselves without being retaliated against? What can we do? What can we do from an HR perspective? That, you know, those biases there, that, you know, it's not a checkbox. Like, oh, we talked to 10 diverse candidates in this pool, and so we did everything we were supposed to do, but no one is getting hired, or there's only 2 people, you know, that's getting hired on a quarterly basis. So it's a lot of things that we can do for us ourselves, for us in leadership positions, for us in D&I, CEO, all the way down to make sure. That's why I commended, you know, Josefina for this conference that she's doing. There are all different types of faces here. You know, all different types of, you know, women here that are standing together to do something like this. So if you see conferences, you know, folks in leadership position, and they ask you to come and speak, and you don't see the panel is diverse, say no, or say, hey, like, if you want me to do this, then I need for you to go and grab some more folks of color. I need for you to go and grab some more ladies on here. Like, how do you have all these men talking about women issues and you don't have a woman here? So it's those little things that we can do to pay that forward, to be a part of the change that we're trying to see.
And Anicia, I encourage folks that are to either unmute. I've given most of the folks the opportunity to unmute and speak, as well as if you'd like to put your video on, this is the time to do it. We will be shutting down the videos when the panel starts. This is an opportunity to just kind of network, talk with each other. We will be sharing, if you want to share your LinkedIn profile, put it in chat, and we'll make sure everybody that's here gets it. But to your point, Anicia, it's so important. It's so important to get a sense of where you're at and what you're feeling. I know many of us are optimistic that things will change, that that people, because of the pandemic, are a little bit more aware of their own feelings, and so maybe are a little bit have allowed themselves to be vulnerable and step into a different space. Does anyone agree with that?
Josefina, can you, this is Kip, yes. So, you know, owning a company and having many of our employees really moved by this in a way that I mean, men and women moved by this whole issue has really allowed us to lean into these conversations, which we never would have had before. So, and I think that what I'm getting from the people in my organization, and I couldn't agree with you more, Anicia, about it's not just this one time, it's a cultural shift, it's a conversational shift. And to a lot of what I got is a lot of the white people are afraid to have the conversations because they're afraid of saying the wrong thing. So I was on a talk with my company yesterday about this, and we were bringing everybody from philanthropy and D&I together to say, how do we learn together? How do we read? So we have a whole Google Doc that is everyone's sharing articles and books. And I think that it's as much about educating ourselves combined with taking action. And yes, I do think that it is going to shift people's emotional state moving forward, and it's not going to be like, okay, that was the flavor of the month. And maybe that's me imagining, and I love to imagine, that's what I did, but I want to imagine a future that is more communal and integrated, and it has to. So I do support what you said.
Yeah, Kip, and just to piggyback off of that as well, I'm glad that you're bringing in, you know, everyone to have that conversation. What I know shouldn't be happening is, oh, I'm sorry, can someone please mute? So what shouldn't be happening is you going to your only, you know, diverse person that you have in your company and saying, hey, help us solve this problem, right? Because it's not just their problem. A lot of times you have D&I people who are in these roles. There are people of color, but they have no power to do anything, right? So it's not just on them to fix the company's diversity problem. It's an everybody problem. And how do we come and do it? Because again, like I said at the beginning, you know, your diverse employees, they are exhausted right now. They are exhausted in spirit. They are exhausted in the mind. They are exhausted. So definitely please do not single out your one or two, you know, folks of color and bombard them with, you know, fix us and tell us how to, you know, fix us, because they need help too. They need the tools, you know, they need, you know, the funding to be able to do some of these things. And I'm hoping that those conversations are starting to happen now, because all this money has appeared out of thin air, which you told the diversity person last year, you guys didn't have the money in the budget to be able to do that. But yet in 2 weeks, you have produced 10 millions and millions of dollars to donate to other organizations. So you have the money. It's where your priorities lie, and this should be a priority.
Okay.
Well, I just want to say, I think people, my hope and my wish is that people will stay in this for the long haul. The changes that need to happen are not going to be quick, and they're not going to be easy. And I hope and pray that we keep an open mind as we move forward. There's a lot of, the pandemic has laid bare a lot of inequities. We all are horrified by some of the stories, the hot spots and so on and so forth. Certainly it's been amplified by the horrific scene of someone being literally murdered on camera, on television. And then I don't want to forget the gentleman 2 weeks ago, Abraham, who was murdered also. We saw videos of that. It's like, oh my God, we're out of control as a society, that we somehow haven't resolved something as basic as you don't go around killing people simply because they're Black or what have you. And secondly, I worry, having, I hate to admit this, but having grown up in the 60s and 70s, I want to see us come respond to our higher angels. It's not going to be easy. I hear what you're saying. I agree with you, calling out the one or two diverse people in your world. And that's important. And I agree with you in terms of supporting them as well. I also want to encourage people to own their stuff. You know, I really think people need to say, if I don't have a diverse community, I've got information here. I don't need to tell you anything. Just look around. Who's your community? Who do you hang with? Who do you socialize with? All that good stuff. So, you know, don't be counting on someone else. Take a look inside and say, what am I doing? And what can I do to really partner with people going forward? Because we all have a vested interest, you know, that all boats rise. So that's my wish.
Yeah, I love that. I really do, and I am wishing right here with you, sister. I am. Yes, I am wishing with you. I just wanted to encourage everyone, again, if you have questions, if you, have something to say as far as attendees, you are free to chat. You can put your hand up so I can see you. If you have something to add to the conversation, please continue to put your LinkedIn information, your social information inside of the chat, so that folks can follow you, and that sort of thing. So someone asked me, did we have they asked if we had an Instagram handle for this talk. Josefina, what hashtag are we using today? Are we using like hashtag Roar Conference, or what are we using for hashtags so that folks can follow along?
Anicia, we're using Roar, as well as you'll see this in the Right Media Instagram, in my Josefina Bonilla Facebook, the Right Media page is there. So all this information will be online shortly after the conference is over.
Okay, awesome. And if you can just put inside of the chat box for everyone, the pages so that they can follow and see. Yes, thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Omama, for doing that.
Awesome sauce. Miss Camille, I would love just to get your 2 cents about, what's happening right now inside of the, community, what you bring to the table for this conversation as well.
Well, it's in my closing remarks, which is why I'm being quiet. Okay. But I can also tell you, though, that I sent out an email to all of my Black friends at my undergrad, Princeton. And I also added specifically 2 white people to that list for a certain purpose. Mm-hmm. I knew that the 2 white people who I added to that list, they are multi millionaires, if not billionaires. And I knew that they would know none of the Black people on that list, even though we all went to Princeton together. And some of us were the same year class. And I sent out my communication that my husband had prepared for his Black-owned business. And the person came back to me, who's my classmate, a white male, and he shared his story with me. He said on one side, his mother was from Alabama and had owned slaves. And on the other side, his uncle actually represented Rosa Parks. And he's quarantined right now with his college age daughters. And he said, as a result of that, he is really learning all about his privilege, okay? And he was so glad that I actually included him, that I felt that he was somebody that was safe, that I could share this information with, this call to action with, because he said, I know I can't empathize, but you recognize, even if we've never had a conversation before about this, that I would be somebody that would want to learn. And that's the reason why I sent it. And the other woman as well said the same exact thing. So going back to what Dr. Edgehill said, you have to be courageous, guys. If you don't
Yeah.
do it, no one else will. And sometimes your white friends are just waiting for you to reach out to them. And yes, they're the ones that own everything. So frankly, the responsibility should be on them, but it oftentimes is not. As long as we do the reaching and we reach each other, I don't care which way it goes, frankly. I just want to make sure that I'm enlightening somebody and they may also have something for me as well.
So hot.
Yeah, Camille.
And that's a great point.
I'm so sorry. I was just going to ask, just for everybody's sake, could you expand on what is white privilege?
Oh my goodness. White privilege is America. It is America. That is really what America is. I mean, it's the access to, it's the fact that you can walk down the street in your neighborhood that you lived in for 20 years, which my husband cannot do, and with a Harvard t-shirt on, and no one stops you and asks you, do you live here? And they're the ones that are new to the neighborhood. Okay? It's the fact that you don't have to have the Harvard law degree or the Princeton undergrad degree, and you can still be the CEO of the company. In fact, you don't even need to know necessarily your stuff. And you can still be the CEO of the company and not just the family-owned company. All right? That is the appeal of white privilege. The fact that you never, ever, ever question the fact that when you walk into a room, that you're supposed to be in command of that room.
Mm-hmm.
That's what white privilege is to me.
Thank you. And I'm just gonna I'm gonna kick this over to Dr. Lisa Coleman. Dr. Lisa, could you talk to us about, and I'm sure you guys have seen this, on social, about Karens. Please enlighten us about the Karens of the world and why that is such a problem and issue, so much that New York is drafting legislation naming it the Karen bill or something like that, what have you. Please enlighten us about what is this Karen thing, so that everybody can be on the same wavelength of what we're talking about when we talk about the privilege of Karen.
Well, thank you for that. Yes, so we know a little bit about privilege and how privilege works. And for those of you who've been following Black Twitter, you're familiar with Leslie as well. So I'm just saying, right? So we have various names out there, but it's very much about this privilege. And I think it's about how do we get people who have privilege to have a plan. Right. And I was listening earlier. And so I think it's great to protest. It's great to talk about solidarity. It's great to call your Black and Latino friend and check in and see how they're doing. But where's your plan? Where's your plan? Racism actually is not something, or xenophobia or those things that we do against ourselves. And so these bills and the Karens, right, and the Leslies is to make sure that people not only check their privilege, but that they get a plan and that they get a plan together. Because, right, it's far too often, and I heard this earlier, that the plan is to reach out to people of color and get their plan and have them help you develop your plan. Well, we've made lots of plans. We've had lots of protests. We've been doing this, and I heard Phyllis talking about the 60s, the 70s, the 40s, the 20s, the 1800s. I'm just saying, we've had a plan, right? I mean, it's been lots of plans. It's not just Black people. Mexicans have had plans, right? Dominicans, we've had lots of plans. And so, but those plans are often thwarted by those in privilege. And so how do we really think about, right, and holding? And I think far too often, and I'll just say this, and this is about Leslie and Karen, is far too often we talk about white male privilege, but we don't talk about the ancillary supports of that privilege, right, which is very much about, right, a systemic and systematic structures that support that through very gendered practices, and particularly also through the domestic sphere and the protection of white women. And that protection of white women in that sphere has often led to, right, then that ancillary also protection of the state, which is about then racism.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so very much. And guys, I just wanted again, just to give you time, we are about a couple of minutes or so of ending our networking portion so that we can get into our actual panel discussion with the lovely Dr. Lisa Coleman. So I'm going to give everybody a good, 2-3 minutes. If you have any questions, again, please type them in the question box. Please share your social media so that we can follow you. Again, we have our hashtag, which is ROAR. We also have inside of the box, you have our social media pages there so you can follow along. And I also believe we are live on Facebook too. So if you have any questions, definitely put them in the box. But otherwise, go get your coffee, go get your second cup of coffee, and a snack, because when we come back, we will be back with some lovely ladies that's going to have a discussion here with Dr. Lisa Coleman.
Thank you, Anicia. And again, thanks everybody for being here. I just want to reiterate to please put your questions. This is a great opportunity just to chat. I know many of you are putting your social media channels online. I've also added mine. I'm really looking forward to the panel discussion, as well as Camilla Lee Jackson's commentary speech later on today. Camilla, I'm really, really looking forward to that. I know you can't see me, but I'm going to just change that real quick. There we go. I put this dress particularly for this session. It actually matches my latest book, the cover of the last book that I wrote, which is on Amazon today for the first time. Again, we have a few more minutes before we start live. Although, hi Lisa, so nice to see you. Do we have you? I think you're muted, so I'm going to ask you to. There you go. Thank you for doing that. How are you? I can't wait for your panel today.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's raining here. It just started raining, but I'm inside my home. Which many of us, I'm wondering as I think about this, my life, in addition to my personal life has changed so dramatically in the last couple of years, or a couple of months. I mean, certainly last couple of years, but the last couple of months, it has gone on a complete trajectory that I just didn't expect. Do other people feel that way as well?
Yeah, I'm not supposed to even, as you know, I travel all the time. I mean, I was supposed to have been in something like 9 different countries between when this started. I landed on March 8th. I came into my house. We closed down around the 12th or 13th. And I was like, okay, well, we'll close down for a little while. And now we're closed through September. We'll come back for a few months and probably go back. And I have no travel, which is,
it's crazy because
it's like I was on the road 70% of my time. Like I've counted up, Fina, that I was in my house for 4 months and 17 days in 2.5 years.
Wow.
And now I've been here almost that long. No.
I will say that.
Hello, my dear.
Hi, hello, how are you, Beverly? It's nice to see you.
Same here.
Thank you, Beverly, for your comments this afternoon. They were spot on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I've been going, I started my day very early and hadn't eaten, so I needed to take a break, and I didn't want to have to share my lunch with everyone. So stepped out for a moment.
Eating on Zoom is not fun. It's not fun.
All day.
Although it does help with your diet.
No, it isn't. I have a cracker with peanut butter.
There you go.
So Lisa was talking about how she's been home in the last few months, where the last couple of years, she was home maybe a handful of days throughout the year. And I can attest to that because Lisa would send me text messages from Abu Dhabi and say, hey, how are you? It's like, where are you? And I haven't seen Lisa. And I have seen her more in the last couple of months because we've done a few webinars together than I've seen her in the last 2 years.
No, that's true. I think Zoom is bringing some of us together in all kinds of ways we didn't anticipate.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. We have a few minutes. I know most of the panel is here and we are able to start the panel discussion. If everybody is interested in doing that, we can start a few minutes early. You know that we like to run our conferences on time.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, in that case, again, as Josefina has suggested, we are on time and we are about to get started. So as you guys heard, I want to introduce the lovely Dr. Lisa Coleman. She is the Senior Vice President, Global Inclusion and Strategic Innovation at NYU, and a much sought after speaker. As you just heard her, she's usually all around and on planes, just like me. So let's join in and welcome Dr. Lisa Coleman. She is also going to have the panelists introduce themselves as well to have a good, robust conversation. In addition to, I will be leaving you guys, and Miss Josefina will be taking over my hosting duties, but it has been a pleasure, ladies. It has been a pleasure to share this space with you today. And everyone else, I will leave my information inside of the box as well, but please be great, keep your energy up, protect your space, and do something.
Good job.
Thank you so much. So great to see you. Hope you continue to take really good care. Thank you. So hello, panel. It's great to see everyone. Thank you for that introduction. So yeah, I'm Lisa Coleman. I've been here in New York and I've been in sheltering in place for quite some time. So I hope everyone's taking good care out there. I always like to just thank all of the people who are helping us shelter in place, our delivery workers, the people who clean up the hospitals, the people who are working in the grocery stores, all those people who make it possible for us to be safe where we are. And sometimes in our these days, we're not thanking all the people who are actually making those things possible. And we know they're often members of our historically disenfranchised communities. So thank you to all of those folks out there who are keeping us safe. So we're gonna get started with our panel. And I know some of you are gonna have questions. So I just wanna say, a question has a question mark at the end in case people don't know that. And so we wanna make sure we do that. And also a question is a question. It's not, monologue. So so we want to do that too. And then remember our speakers, we want to make sure that everybody gets to speak. So my first question for our panelists is not really a question, it's just to let you all introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about you and what you do. And then I'm going to get into Roar and into the book and to some of the things you talked about there. So why don't we start with you, Phyllis?
Hi, Lisa. It's good to see you. Gosh, it's been a long time. So nice to see you again. And I want to thank Josefina for her leadership. We've been on this journey together for a number of years. And I agree, she does a phenomenal job of bringing diverse women, in this case, and diverse people together. And I always admire that intentionality about being inclusive. She really walks the talk. So thank you, Josefina. And so a little bit about me and Conexión. I'm the founder and CEO of Conexión. And Conexión is Spanish for connections. And I tell people that is what we do. Conexión is about making connections. And specifically, we focus on Hispanic, Latino, Latinx demographic, which is the second largest demographic in the region in the United States. And we work with organizations across every sector, government, nonprofit, and business. We work with organizations who believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and are committed to accelerating the advancement of Latino leadership within their organizations and within our communities, not just the ethnic communities, but the communities writ large. And we do that through a successful, proven, and innovative approach to mentoring. We match executive mentors with outstanding Latino talent. And we are now proud to say that we have participants from 17 states and Puerto Rico. And this is our 15th year. And we're committed to continue to help organizations engage with this growing Hispanic Latino professional community. So thank you for having me here today.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you too, Phyllis. All right, let's see who's up next. Alpha, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, Lisa. Great to be here today on the panel. I think last time, Lisa, you and I were on a conference in Columbia, I think, so, or NYU, right?
That's
so
right.
It's great to see you. Well, a little bit about me. So I have about 20 plus year experience in the industry. So I started out in manufacturing and then ended up in engineering and construction for a couple of years. And then went to aero defense industry. And then last 15 years or 12 years in financial, starting with SocGen and then Goldman Sachs. And then recently I'm with BNY Mellon. I run the head of third-party governance advisory for all line of businesses at BNY Mellon. A couple of things I do on my personal side is I do sit on a couple of the nonprofit boards, mainly trying to helping women in finance, which I'm a founder of, and then Take Two initiative, which is women or men who are out of the workforce who want to come back to the market. We kind of facilitate that discussion, and really, really excited to be here.
Thanks so much, Alpha. Nice to see you again. And Yvonne.
Hey, Lisa, nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
And thank you, Josefina, for your leadership, and Bev, thank you. Just two women that I have admired for many, many years, and many of you on the screen. So great to see everyone. Yvonne Garcia, I am the chief. Hi, Bev. I'm the chief no, I'm not the chief. I feel like a chief diversity officer some days. I'm the chief of staff to chief diversity officer has been on my mind all day because we're trying to get things moving here at State Street. I am the chief of staff to Ron O'Hanley, the CEO of State Street and the head of communications for State Street as well. I'm also the president or the chair of the Women's Advisory Board for the Chamber. And most recently, leading an initiative called Small Business Strong in response to the pandemic, and particularly for minority and women-led businesses in Massachusetts.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Yvonne. Okay, so let's get started, I think. So we all are in the book Roar, and I want to give a big shout out to Josefina, of course, because of her tremendous work. And for those who don't know, she's got a new book out, and I'm sure we'll do a big plug for that as well. But since we were both all in the book, and my section was called Don't Let Them See You Sweat. So that is what, so that's what I talked about. So I'm just wondering if each one of you could comment briefly on the sections that, your sections on the book, and tell us a little bit about, you know, some of the things you said and maybe extrapolate from there. So I'll start in the same order in which I began. I'll start with you, Phyllis.
All right, well, my section is ignore the naysayers, and I've gotten a lot of practice ignoring naysayers. And there's some themes emerging in this session today. So I feel really good about kind of on the same page, I think, which will be helpful to others in our community. But one thing about naysayers, I mean, clearly I view naysayers as people who have a really difficult time with change, for example, have really difficult time acknowledging that they're clinging desperately to the status quo. Then people like are on this panel, all of us are individuals. We show up and we change things just by showing up. We don't even say anything. You just showed up and you change it. So I remember being the first non-Anglo kid in my kindergarten class in Omaha, Nebraska. all the way till now. I'm on a number of different boards, and all of the boards that I now serve on are mainstream boards. They're wonderful boards, wonderful organizations, and I'm even one of the 1 or 2 Latinos on those boards. And once again, whether I open my mouth or not, I know that I'm bumping up against the status quo. I'm bumping up against the way they do what they do. And so there's 3 things that I think around ignoring the naysayers. Number 1, you've got to start with self, as I think Kip mentioned earlier. You've got to start with self. You've got to be really clear about what's important to you, your values that others have alluded to, and own your values and ask yourself, why am I here? What did I show up for? What am I signing on for? And really know that about yourself and really be comfortable with where you are, believe in yourself, believe in your beliefs and so forth. So that you got to start there. The second thing is, yes, we're going to run into naysayers, people who push back on what you're about. We're change agents. You know, every career, everything I've ever done in my career, I'm a change agent. I'm showing up, I'm pushing on the status quo. So my father used to say back in Omaha, Nebraska, my short, indigenous looking Mexican father, when people would say things to him, I say, did that make you mad? And my dad would say, Iha, you have to educate the people. He saw that as an opportunity to educate them, to dispel whatever misgivings or ignorance they had about what is a 5'3" Mexican guy doing here. You know, because he was a businessman, for God's sakes, in Omaha. So I always look at those naysayers. My first reaction is, okay, his voice is in my head. Do something, try to educate them, try to move them from being naysayers and objecting to the agenda that I or my organization or my community may be putting out there. Really help them move beyond their misgivings and see it as an opportunity. If after all your efforts it's not happening, I also believe you got to move on. I don't want to stay in that energy. I want to move on. I want to find the allies that I think others, Beverly, I think alluded to, finding those allies, those people that are open and are willing to learn and willing to engage and see the opportunities and the possibilities, engaging with somebody who's different than them in any number of different ways. So in terms of ignoring the naysayers, I say, give it a shot, see what you can do. We're change agents, we're innovators, we're disruptors. Do your job, people. And if it's not working, move on. Don't let their negativity bring you down. Find your allies, find your supporters, find your affirmers.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Phyllis. All right, so now we'll move to Alpha. So tell us a little bit about your tenet in war.
Sure. So mine was don't be afraid to simply ask. And I think especially as women, we always have a tendency to sometimes overthink, and we always think about what people's thought process is. If I ask this question, how am I perceived? So I think very early age, my parents have kind of instilled this, you know, don't be afraid just to ask. It's, if you don't take the shot, you can't make the shot, right? And for me, I felt either it's getting a mentor in my career, either having a sponsor, or even just career opportunities. I've always asked why or why not, right? How do I get better, or what are the things? So I think one of the 3 qualities that I think you need is a risk taker, right? Anytime you're asking a question, you are taking a risk, you are, but I think the returns are significant. Second thing is just be adaptable, what Phyllis just said, right? I don't think any of us will be successful if we are not adaptable to change, and especially now more than ever with COVID and what we're going through with the racism in the country. I think it's more and more important for us to be adaptable and really be able to support what you believe in. And the third is grit. I think grit is so critical, or resiliency for me personally, because I've had a very amazing, successful career. I did have to take some time off because my daughter had some health issues. And in order to do that, I took that hiatus for 6 years, and it was very, very challenging to come back. But again, I think it's important to have that grit and resiliency to saying, hey, I'm going to be able to come back even stronger. I'm going to work harder, and I'm going to be adaptable. So for me, I think, you know, what success for me looks like is don't be afraid. Ask the question simply. And, you know, it's okay with whatever the answer you get, but at least you feel you are empowered and you take the decisions rather than waiting for somebody to make those decisions for you.
That's great. Thanks so much. We'll come back to some of this. And Yvonne?
Great. My section was biting off more than you can chew. And that probably defines my life and my career. I have always been very intentional in everything I've decided to do, both from a professional and personal perspective. I've always been attracted to kind of the type of jobs that keep me up at night, where I sit there and wonder, am I really qualified to do this? Am I going to be able to handle it? What I've learned by taking on those type of jobs, whether it's my current one, or when Bank of America sent me over to China for a year and a half, while having 2 babies at home, and not being able to bring them along, those were the type of roles where I grew the most. But what I learned is, because what happens, there's a high correlation of taking on those, taking on more than you can chew, to not spending quality time with your family. But so I had a few principles that had to be met in order to do that. And it was, am I doing something that I believe in? Am I passionate about it? And are my actions going to eventually make my children better people, better leaders? Am I going to be able to provide for them in a way that will allow them to get the most out of life? So everything I take on, I always ask myself those questions. So I've, a lot of people, I've heard a lot like, oh, you're crazy. I can't believe you're doing that. And I've just learned that crazy means that I'm doing something that, many won't do, which in my mind is a good thing. So it's a differentiating factor, I guess. But I will say that I was raised in a way that, I saw my parents always giving back to our community. They came to America 60 years ago from the Dominican Republic. And since we were little, I have never, my entire childhood living with my parents, we always had somebody living with us, an aunt, uncle, cousin, who was just trying to make it in this country, whether it's to learn the language or find a job. So at a very young age, I had this sense of philanthropy, right, in whichever form that my parents were able to provide it back then. And that has stayed with me. So in addition to my professional roles, I've always played some type of role in the community, whether it was, leading Alpha for Latino professionals, or now from the Women's Network. And then most recently, trying to help small businesses, minority and women-led small businesses in Massachusetts with our CEO, and standing up a platform that will help some of these small businesses navigate through the crisis and beyond. So that's always been kind of me. I've always looked for ways to give back, and hopefully, the generation that follows, will do the same. I love that they have a philanthropic mindset as well. The generations, I just see my kids just looking for ways.
There and stop by and drop your resume off. Get them. What?
I think someone's not muted. Cheryl, if you have to mute.
Somebody's dropping a resume off. That's it. That's
If someone's dropping someone off, exactly. We're talking about I heard earlier, we're talking about some of the things around the pandemic. So we know that women got a lot going on in the homes. So our new colleagues, our significant others, our spouses and children, right? They don't always make great colleagues. So thank you so much. And I want to say, I always believe in embracing the crazy. We got to embrace the crazy and go with it, especially as Phyllis was talking about being a change maker. We just got to do that. So my next question for you all is really about, right, being a change maker. And all of you sort of talked a little bit around something around that. And then you all talked about values, right? So let's go back to this. So, because one of the things I think that lots of people struggle with, and certainly people, it doesn't matter which generation, right, can struggle with, how do we find that space where we can actually, as Alba, as you said, take risks, right? Where we can actually then enter into that space of being a change maker. How do we find that, grit, that oomph, that whatever it is to do that? And I know that all of you found that oomph, but can you tell our community where and how and what made that and how you struggled with that? Because I imagine sometimes you have it more than you have it at other times. So let's talk about that, all right? All right, Phyllis, you're up.
Okay. Well, I think Yvonne kind of pushed me a little bit here. I'm thinking about that. I think for me, obviously, it's got to be something you're passionate about. I also agree. My parents were Mexican immigrants, came with the clothes on their back, that kind of story, struggled, and by the time I was born, had established themselves. And they instilled in me, not unlike, I guess, Yvonne's family as well, that it really takes grit. You've really got to push forward and I never ever doubted for 1 second that I shouldn't be doing more than just my own little world. My dad, when we'd go to Mexico in, you know, way back in the day, we would go back, we'd drive to Mexico from Omaha, Nebraska, and to go to Mexico City. But my dad would take these side trips, these tiny little villages where I said, I don't even know how you found these little villages. And there would be people living in these little huts and stuff. And they were, you know, poor people, very, very poor people. And I would give them my old clothes and candy and all that. But the point that Daddy was making, even when I was 9, 10, 11 years old, is he would say to me in his broken English or in his Spanish that he said, I want you to know where you came from. Now, I was born in Omaha. I wasn't born in some village in the middle of nowhere in Mexico, but he wanted me to know what my roots were and to understand that it was incumbent on us. He said, you know, he said, for all the things you have, don't forget that you have an obligation to do for others. And I don't even know where he got that either, but that's what he believed. So I was 9, 10, 11. You just think that's the way the world is. So then you grow up and you just keep doing it, except it's bigger stuff. And I'm not giving people my toys necessarily, but I am sharing my gifts. So I think being passionate, and I think having those immigrant roots instilled in you and the values really, really put me on a path anyway.
That's really important, Phyllis, and I think you're right. What we get as children often, influences a lot. And I like what you say about not questioning. I know my parents told me a lot of things that I didn't question until I was in my 20s, and I was like, wait, that's not true. So,
like, dang, you know, everybody doesn't do that.
Yeah, exactly, right? It was our normal. Yeah. So I will tell me a little bit about you, and tell me a little bit about your,
So I think for me, look, my parents, again, you know, are Asian descent and was raised in California, Southern California, so Orange County. But I've had 2 sisters, so we had 3 girls growing up. So my dad always was, I think, you know, my role model in a sense is there's no difference between girls or boys, right? Whatever the boys can achieve, girls can. And I think I literally saw that growing up, right? My mom had a career. My dad would sometimes cook for us. I think he would braid our hair, right? Which was unconventional, right? And people used to be like, oh, your dad like braids your hair. And I'm like, yeah, it's a little crooked today. And, you know, I'm in 2nd grade going in. But I think that really resonated with me in so many ways, right? And why it's so important is both of my parents equally understood the contribution and career success for both of them. And being able to see that, I think really opened up, at least for me, that I can achieve anything. And in the financial industry, and I mean, Yvonne can probably, you know, resonate this with, is it's very, very challenging to be a woman first, and then to be either Asian or Latino or African-American. I think that's even harder to get in these senior level positions. So growing up, you know, most of my family either were doctors or lawyers. So I didn't have any mentors or sponsors who can really kind of show me how the business political landscape is. So I did have a very hard time breaking in. And like I said, my first half of my career was in manufacturing, was in aero defense industry, which I think was somewhat a little bit of an equal playing field. When I came in on the financial industry with companies like SocGen and Goldman Sachs and even BNY Mellon, it was very, very tough because I didn't see a lot of women who looked like me, who were in the ECs or in the board, right? Now, again, you had some of these MDs that we kind of put nice brochures, right? But nobody that you could actually relate and kind of go through their journey. So I did have, you know, for me, I think it's like taking that risk, but it's being able to have right people who guided me. Some of them are really strong women who I'm very, very thankful for, and I continue to build those relationships. And majority of them in the starting of my career were all men, to be honest. So for me, it's like literally learning from them, you know, having my back, giving me these stretched assignments, what even Yvonne was saying. You know, I take crazy stuff and it's like, you know, and we kind of doubt, am I going to be successful? But I think it's so easier when you do have the support system that can help you and guide you. And I think it's having the values very early on, right? Being 3, you know, women that are growing up and being able to say there is nothing that is not attainable in your life and will support you in every single journey. I think I was very, very fortunate to be able to have that.
Thank you, Alba. And I think you mentioning the importance of your father's role in that, we've been doing some research about fathers and their influences in families as well on girls. And so I think, right, and so that early formation. And I come from a family of computer scientists, and so I totally understand that early formation. And when you go astray, they're like, where are you going?
Exactly. And my sisters and their husbands are all doctors except me and my husband. So clearly, you know, they can't fathom that fact at all.
Exactly.
Even now, after how many years? But yes, totally agreed.
All right, Yvonne, so let's talk about oomph.
Yeah, I think Josefina is probably one of the most strategic people I know, putting the four of us together, because literally, such a similar story with my dad's role, and my sisters and her husband are physicians, and I think they think I'm a bank teller still, which nothing wrong. I was a bank teller. That's how I started out. Actually, I started out wearing an ATM machine costume in Cambridge in front of Harvard University when ATMs first came out promoting ATMs. So
Wow.
How times have changed.
So, I mean, not you, but I remember people doing that.
Oh yeah, that was me. That was me. Yeah.
But think about how, Yvonne, think about it, like, if you think that was such an innovative thing, right? If you think about ATMs and how they've come in, and think about our journey, now we can do it through an app, right? You don't even need to go to an ATM, and you can do Venmo. So just that journey of human innovation and technology has transformed so much. So it's kind of cool that you can say to people, I was that person who stood out there with an ATM.
I love hearing stories of when we, how we started our careers, and because it just represents how hard we've worked to get, as far as we have come, and I'm sure there's so much more to come for us. In terms of, I'll say everything that I recently thought about this, because sometimes you just go, and you forget what, why you're doing what you're doing. But I will say that when I think about the different organizations that I've led from a philanthropic perspective or volunteer perspective, in addition to my roles in the different companies that I've been part of, I've always had a purpose behind it. I've always seen a need. So with Alpha, the Association of Latino Professionals, just meeting 2 or 3, and Phyllis and Josefina have met many of them, and Bev, just meeting 2 or 3 of these Latino students that grew up in Washington Heights in a 1-bedroom apartment with their 6 brothers and sisters, and somehow today, are show up in a suit and are doing internships with PwC and Deloitte. I mean, there's no greater satisfaction than watching that and knowing that Alpha had something to do with their journey. That I have volunteered almost 20 years at Alpha in various roles, and it was like a second job. And the days where I would be exhausted, I'd always think back, like, why am I doing this? And then I would just have to think of those kids and the opportunities that we give them, and it makes it worth it. We also started Milagros para Niños at Children's Hospital, which provides medical care for kids that can't afford care. Same thing. It's just one walk around the ICU, watching the parents, by the crib side, with their terminally ill children, and knowing that the money we've raised is helping perhaps save a life. And then more recently with the Small Business Strong, trying to help small businesses recover, thinking of all these small Main Street shops in our, in Chelsea and Lawrence, trying to survive. There always has to be something there that's important to me and that I feel is worth the fight. And that has always been what gives me that and that drive.
Thanks so much. And I'm going to switch up the order this time, so I'm just warning you in advance. So my next question, and you all talked about your values and systems, and thank you. And Yvonne, I think that it's so right, the inspiration that you talked about, right, from students, and then looking at people in terms of parents and the hospitals, etc. But that's also difficult, right? That's also it's also a struggle. So I want to turn to the struggle a little bit and talk to me a little bit about a time when you struggled or failed or, messed up so bad you just were like, ah! So tell me a little bit about that, how you dealt with it, how you overcame it, what the outcome was. And if the outcome was bad, then, tell me about the journey to the next thing, where you began to, figure it out and recover. And so this time I'm going to start with you, Al.
Sure. So I can tell you when I took the 6-year hiatus break, right? And I remember I was trying to come back after 2008. So I started looking for a job in 2009. And I think I must have gone through at least about 30 interviews or so. And every single time I would go through and they were like, wow, we see this big gap in your resume. and what makes you think you come back? And there were times where I literally would have gone in the interview and I would have been like, I took the, I worked for 15 years. I took a break. That didn't mean that I became brain dead, right? I did, I raised my child. I took care of my family. And it was very, very hard. It was very, very challenging. And honestly, there were times where I was doubting myself, like, am I going to be able to come back? What I left? And especially having some of the naysayers, like Phyllis, what you were saying, right? Some of these senior executives who really wanted to help, and they just saw this big gap. So for me, I think it was very challenging time personally for me to think, do I, and at this point I was willing to take anything just to be able to show and kind of come back to the workforce. And given I had experience in manufacturing and aero defense and engineering, I think there were times where I was thinking like, what even if I start as an assistant just to do something? And luckily, I got a great opportunity after almost a good year and a half, 2 years, until I got to Goldman Sachs. And they had this amazing program that gave me an opportunity. But I will say, that was probably one of the most challenging times I've had is, when you do take this hiatus and you want to come back, the society and a lot of the organizations were not open. And again, you have to think about this was 10 years ago, right? Now there's a significant movement about bringing women to the workforce. There's a lot of programs and organizations who are now diving in and understanding, similar to D&I, how it's so critical. But at the time in that journey, I will tell you, it was probably one of the most painful process that I've gone myself and even my family, right? Because I will go through into how did it go? And I'd be like, well, they said no. Again? Yes. And this doesn't help your morale by any means or your self-esteem. But I think that just made me fight harder, stronger. And I think, I wouldn't be here today with you guys if Goldman Sachs didn't give me an opportunity. And then I kind of built my career back up again. So, any women or men who are out there who are trying to think, right, that if I've taken, either I've done startup or I've taken a break or I've focused on my health or my parents, whatever that is, don't doubt yourself, have the confidence and please try to come back, because there's so much that you can add value to any organizations. But we just need to be open and receptive. So that's the message I would give.
Well, thank you so much. And we all know that lots of people are going to take all kinds of different breaks during this pandemic, right? And people have to pivot into new roles and new companies, et cetera. So let's hope our companies are a little more nimble and agile and open, as you talk about. But thank you for sharing that. That's absolutely right. Okay, so Yvonne, we're going to go to you next and have you talk to us a little bit about your struggles or struggle.
I would say it probably about 19 years ago, 20 years ago, I was a broker at a firm in Boston, and I was the only woman on the team. I was part of an incoming class. There were about 20 of us, and I was doing my MBA at the same time at BU, and I was also a full-time broker. So I was building a book of business, which was quite difficult. And I remember like the head person at that firm said, you really don't need an MBA to be successful as a broker. You just need to build your book of business and you'll be fine. We really don't want this to distract you from being successful here. But I had always had my heart set on getting a graduate degree in business, and I didn't really listen to him. So I kept going. And then about 6 months after starting my MBA, I found out that I was pregnant with my first child. So I walked in and now I'm getting an MBA and I'm pregnant. And I thought the guy was going to fall off his chair when I told him I was pregnant. So I was, 2 strikes. So I eventually decided to leave. And, it was a really hard decision, but it went along with really making sure that the organizations you work for are aligned with what you believe in and what's right and your values and moral compass. And I just felt that the things that were important to me, like family and an education, weren't perhaps as important to them. And so I left. And that was tough because, I was learning a lot and I enjoyed the role, but sometimes you do need to just extract yourself from situations where you feel there's no room for growth, or, or you feel that you're just not going to be recognized as a leader there. And then the second one was when I went to China. I've always classified that as my biggest professional accomplishment, but my biggest personal sacrifice. I left. I left on Max's first birthday, the day of his first birthday. Izzy was 5. And it was really hard. I couldn't bring them along. I could only come back once a month for a week. So it was really hard to do that. But I remember, just having the support of my husband, and then also knowing that actually Bev was the one who told me. I remember I found out when, I don't know if Bev left already, but I found out when Bev was teaching a class for the partnership, and I said to her, I don't know what I'm going to do. I just got an offer to go to China. And we leave in 2 days, and she says, why are you still talking to me? Go pack, like, get out of here. This is a great opportunity for you. So, but I did, after almost a 2-year rotation doing that, it took a toll on the family. Really on me. My family was fine because my parents were watching the kids and cooking for them. And, my husband was really happy that he didn't have to do anything. But I guess it took a toll on me, and I fell into a state of depression, and I decided to not renew for a second tour in China. As much as I loved the country, I loved the growth, the career growth that I was on, but I just took a step back and realized that from a mental health perspective, it wasn't healthy for me, and so I guess I quit, and I went on to another company. But it was hard. It was hard to let go of something you're passionate about, but I had to do it for my mental state and for my kids. So.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Yvonne. I think that's so important. We talk a lot about work-life balance and trying to figure it out. And I think that brings to the fore, right, that these are not easy decisions sometimes, right? And also trying to manage MBA and child, and then of course going to China and trying to manage all of that. That is very much about those sort of everyday struggles that we have and the choices that we have to make. So thanks for sharing. We'll come back to that hopefully in the Q&A as well. All right, Phyllis.
Hi. So one of my big examples, I learned a lot. It was painful, but I learned a great deal. I was working for a company that was an established 200-year-old company. I was very excited about the opportunity, the job. This is maybe, I don't know, 20-something years ago or more. And going back, we've talked about values, being true to yourself, being changing, all those things, right? And so up until that point in time, I actually believed all of that, when people would say that, and I'd say, well, this is a great opportunity. I was the only Latina in the leadership role in the company and so forth. And the person to whom I reported, he hired me, but it wasn't good chemistry almost from the beginning. And one of the things that drove me crazy is we'd go to meetings and he would lie, basically. I'm just going to say it. And it would drive me insane. And then, they were important meetings, and I would come back to my colleagues, and I would say to Jim, I'd say, he would go to the same meetings, and I said, he lied in the meeting. And then Jim would say to me, he said, yes. He said, I know, everybody knows, but that's not a priority right now. Now, that was hard for me to hear. I thought, well, but he's lying. He's a senior person. He reports to the CEO. How is it okay? And it's like, it was a hard lesson for me to learn that there can be other priorities. And certainly what he was doing was good enough. It was good enough. And the goals that they had were much bigger than that department. And so that was a hard lesson for me to learn.
So that is so important.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh my God. And so finally we came to a parting of the ways. I always tell people I'm surprised I lasted as long as I did, because we probably argued almost every day because I couldn't keep my mouth shut, right? And I couldn't. And it's like, oh my God. And Jim would say, he was very like, calm and whatever. So finally in the end, we had a parting of the ways. And so I learned a lesson. Number one, there could be other priorities other than the ones that you think are important. And so, learn to understand that and figure out, is that something you can live with or not? And if not, then you're out of there. So that was one lesson. And then after I was out of there, I was glad that I was out. However, then going back to being in transition, when I hadn't planned on being transition in that moment, and I have to say that I really learned a lot of lessons about have a plan. You can't spend 24 hours a day obsessing about it. Just do your thing. Looking for a job become your job. I mean, I got so crazy. I tell people, call me because I'm not sure my phone is working. And I thought, well, maybe my phone's not working. Nobody's calling me back. So I did all my little, checked the box, made X number of contacts. And I thought, screw this, I'm going to Paris. So I went to Paris for 2 weeks because I thought, why am I sitting here when I can be somewhere else? So I left, came back, and then things worked out. But the other thing that I learned in that is resiliency. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Stop being such a freaking baby. So he won, you lost. Okay, suck it up. Get over it. Get over yourself. Go to Paris, do your thing, come back. And I have to say, tonight we're doing a session coming back here 20, 25 years later. We have this pandemic, Conexión. Some of our mentees in Conexión have come to me and said, I got laid off, I got furloughed, I was in transition, I had a plan, it got all messed up. Can you help us? Can Conexión help us? And we're doing a session on Conexión resiliency. I thought, hey, where does that come from? So, I learned something a long time ago that's now paying dividends for other people that, you're going to be okay. We have a network, we have a community, use your community, use your network, be with people who affirm you, believe in you, and you will get through this. We will get through this. You're not alone. So I learned a couple of really good lessons from that whole experience.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. That's so great. And I think resiliency, right, and learning about prioritization. And in your story, it's also how you reprioritize, right? You reprioritized and went to Paris and did some other things and figured out what you needed to do. So, and I think that's a very hard lesson sometimes when we're working with companies and organizations, the lies, the prioritization, et cetera. But resiliency is the key. And so that's my next question is really about, all of you have talked about the differential impacts being women of color, right? And so whatever you've, and some of that is because of the childbearing years, of those kinds of things. And so I'm sort of interested if you could share with our audience, how did you find those supports? How did you find those allies? How did you create your networks? I heard Bev talking earlier about networks and how important they are, right? And I think that to be resilient, it's really hard to do it alone, right? Right. So how do we do that with others? How do we find those people? And so why don't I start with you, Yvonne, and then I'll go to Phyllis, and then I'll end with you, Alba. Yeah. Then we're going to open up Q&A.
It certainly takes a village. Even kids were young, just finding that support system around, whether it's your parents or friends or people in the community that can help. So I wouldn't be able to do what I do or what I've done in the past without that support. And finding also, the right partner certainly helps. But I will say that people always joke because my friends are all over the place. I have friends that are CEOs and I have friends that are janitors. And I always joke I actually have much more fun hanging out with my janitor friends than my CEO friends. But we just humans are humans, and it's just I've always really felt very blessed to have such a diverse group of friends, because each person that you engage with brings something different to your life, and you learn from each other, regardless of your stature or your background. So I have a very diverse group of friends from all industries, and whenever I have a problem, I always look for very different perspectives, because no problem is too big for any one of them, right? It's just a different perspective. So I've really surrounded myself by people from all backgrounds, including industries and titles, etc. And I feel that my life is very rich as a result.
Yvonne, that is so important. I say this when I'm hiring for my team. I'm always using, I hire people who are so different, people who will fight with me, argue with me on the Myers-Briggs or Strength Finders tests. I want them in different quadrants and all of that, right? Because, but you have to know what kind of leader you are if you can take that, right? But you're right. I surround myself with people who are going to just, tell me when I'm wrong. So it's important to have those perspectives, I think. And it does help to build, right, resiliency and build that network. So I think that's right. So Phyllis, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I keep saying conexión, that's what our meat and potatoes is, the conexión, or frijoles and arroz, I don't know what, but anyway, building networks, building connections is so important. I really feel like the culmination of my life's journey has been to create an organization. I pray to God lives well beyond me, and they'll say, whoever started that? But that we've created such a wonderful and supportive network that people really are there for one another. And I would agree that what others have said already, that you know, I think it starts in the family, the nucleus of your family, what kind of a family that you grew up in, where people really affirm you. My dad, when he sent me off to public school in Omaha, he said to me, now remember, you know, I'm this little brown girl going to Castellar Public School, kindergarten, and my dad said, so people are going to ask you what you are, you tell them you're Mexican and you're proud. And now again, I don't know about other, you know, I'll just speak for my family, but you know, you do what you're told, right? So sure enough, not kindergarten, first grade, Mrs. Stroy, my first grade teacher, honest to God, that's why I remember it. She actually said, talk to me like, what did I eat? I mean, it's like, oh my God. I mean, and I didn't feel like the way then, I just said, you know, I said, I'm Mexican and I'm proud. I mean, you know, and then she walked away. I was in her class, so she could talk to me again. But it's like, looking back, I thought, what a weird thing for a teacher to ask a little kid, like, what do you eat? What would you think I ate? I don't know, food? I don't know, you know. So anyway, so it was the odd man out. But I had friends, I didn't know any better, so I was just a friendly kid. I talked to kids. High school, I was one of the few Latinos, and in my high school, it was the Mexican kids. This is Omaha. Mexican kids and the white kids, the Anglo kids. And they kind of stayed separate. Well, again, I didn't know that. You know, nobody gave me the rule book. So I go to high school, I walk in, and I'm in this homeroom class. I'm looking around, there aren't any Mexican kids in my homeroom. So I talked to the kids sitting around me, and I made some friends. You know, I guess it was kind of dumb luck in the beginning, and I didn't know that maybe people didn't do that. Then I just kept going. And then, you know, along the way, I mean, I've just been so blessed. I mean, all of you guys, I love you all. I mean, I know Lisa, I know Yvonne, Josefina. I mean, having people in your world that are just such cool people, you think, damn, you know, I call them friends. It's like, I'm so lucky. So that's affirming. That is so affirming, that each one of you would give me, you know, time and, you know, whatever. And so I just think that it's building that network, finding that affirming network is so critical to surviving, especially if you're a disruptor, especially if you're, you know, the odd person out. And I worked, as you know, Lisa, at Harvard for 5 years with a bunch of men, very smart ones. And if you didn't know how to hold your own, good luck. But we had a lot of really, not a lot, we had a handful of really great women at Harvard that we supported each other, including, I don't know how many people know this, but Diane Patrick and I were still, we were colleagues at the time. Yeah, so she and I would be on committees together, her and me and a bunch of guys, you know. So, but we kind of bonded together and supported each other. So find those wonderful people, men, women, whatever, and you'll be okay.
I think that's really good. And I like how you talked about in the elementary school, right? A little naivete can go a long way sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, Alba, so talk to us a little bit.
So I mean, I agree with Yvonne and Phyllis. I think, like you said, your nucleus, right? Your family and your friends, I think, are critical to your support system. But I think one thing I did a little bit different as well is when I saw these women who were in a higher level positions, you know, I actually just, again, like I said, you know, don't simply just ask questions. And I did. And I said, well, how do you manage? Because most of these meetings, there are men there and like, oh, my wife will go get the son or the soccer game or blah, blah, blah. I'm like, how do you do it? And, you know, I was very fortunate. A lot of women, you know, either said, well, I'm single because I'm focused on my career. I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't apply. A lot of them said, okay, I'm divorced. Okay, so that, you know, that takes me out of the equation. And then I had these women who really had the family, who were juggling with work-life balance, who told me, you know, what kind of support system do you have? You know, what kind of babysitting, daycare? Do you have a cooking lady? Do you have a cleaning lady? And I'm like, what are you guys talking about, right? Because I'm like, well, I am the cooking lady. I am the cleaning lady. I am the mother. I am the person who's doing the job as well. And they're like, no. If you need to focus on your career, you got to prioritize. And you need the right support system. So I was very, very fortunate that, you know, as I was going through my career, people gave me the right guidance on top of, like you said, of course, having my parents and my sisters and having really diverse friends, which I really, really like, because I have a tendency, like you said, you have to have a diverse perspective, right? And I think what Yvonne said really kind of resonated. I have friends who are janitors, I have friends who are CEOs. And I think in order to be whole, right? I don't think it matters what distinction you have. I think it's the values you have and the people that you get along with. And at that point, I don't really care if you're a CEO, CFO, CRO, or you are a janitor. It does, at the end of the day, you're a good human being, and I want to spend time where I can learn from you, right? So I have been very, very fortunate where I just ask people, like, what do you do? Because I'm booked double meetings. My son is expecting me to go see him in his soccer game. My daughter's like, are you going to make it to the choir practice? And, my husband's like, listen, I'm running late for my meeting. So what's your plan? And, how do you manage that? So, I had like a backup of a backup of a backup sitters just in case. So I had plan A, plan B, and plan C, right? And you had to keep them in a rotation schedule so nobody kind of feels that they can go away, right? Same thing with the cleaning, or same thing with the process. So I think, look, it's always juggling act, and we have to be honest, and we're not going to be perfect at it. I am not by any means, but I have been very fortunate where people said, invest the time, get a business manager. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And they're like, well, get a kid who's from high school or college who can come and do your mail. I'm like, they do that? So again, naiveness when you're early in your career, and you're like, oh, that sounds really good. So I think it's being able to use your resources in a right fashion, and then still be able to succeed. And look, everybody doesn't have that privilege, and it takes a lot of, energy, amount of at least financial support. But as you are moving up in your career, you will need that support system, because you're not going to be able to sustain that position or even the level of what you want to contribute.
Thank you, Alka. So for those out there, start to put your Q&A. If you want to ask, I guess, put them in the box, or I guess maybe you can pull up your camera or whatever. But I think that's exactly right? Finding the right people to ask the right questions. Yeah. Because so often, right, and I think you really figuring that out, and then getting the right advice, right? And I think that process of elimination that you talked about, that doesn't apply to me. That doesn't apply to me. Oh, wait, here it is. And so I think that is just crucial. So I have, the question that's come up is, I currently don't have any mentors, but I want at least one. How do I seek out or find mentors, and how can I position myself? And I think this is key, to be a valuable mentee, because we know a lot of mentors are really busy, right? And so I know even for myself, when people reach out and they're like, I want to be a mentee, I'm like, are you ready? So, how do we make those relationships? How does this person make sure they're a valuable mentee so the relationship is mutually beneficial? And who wants to take that? Phyllis wants to take that one. Okay.
As you may or may not know, Conexión we focus on matching amazing, talented Hispanic, Latino, Latinx professionals with incredible mentors. Yvonne's been one of our mentors. Our mentors are diverse. They're men, they're women, they're Anglo, they're Black, they're Asian, they're Latino, etc. In terms of being a good mentee, one of the things that's really, really important, we always tell our mentees, this is our 15th year, we always tell them it's really, really up to you to really, number one, follow up with your mentor, make sure that you manage the agenda, make sure that you keep your commitments. If they're busy people, so if you're supposed to meet them at a certain time, then be there on time and so forth. I think in the beginning, sometimes if you're going to do it on your own, find a mentor on your own. Look around. Who are the people that you admire? Who are the people that you feel are role models to you, that you aspire to be like them? It's never a bad idea to at least reach out to them. You might ask for an informational interview. You might see if they have the time or the inclination, as you mentioned a moment ago, that they might be able to serve as your mentor. Come with an agenda. Don't come with tabula rasa. A lot of our mentors give us feedback. They love to mentor, and oh my gosh, they said it's really on them. It's up to them to really follow up. And for a lot of us, especially from a Latin background, we tend to be very deferential. And on more than one occasion, the mentee said, well, he had to cancel or she had to cancel, and I didn't want to bug him. They expect you to do the work. They expect you to follow up. They expect you to put some effort into it. So sometimes for our Latin mentees, which is all of the Conexionistas, it is a little bit challenging to understand that you can have that relationship with that mentor as long as you're respectful, keep your commitments, and do the homework, and be open to their suggestions and do stuff, and also reciprocate. Don't forget, they're curious about you too. So we always tell all of them, it's your job to be reciprocal. Let them know what the world looks like from where you sit, because they're curious.
Great advice. Thanks, Phyllis. Anybody want to add anything?
Yeah, I'm going to add one more thing, right? I think you also have to be somewhat strategic when you are looking for mentors. And at least I have started doing that in the last 10 years of my career is what do you want out of that relationship, right? Because I think each mentors are very different depending on what you want to focus on. So are you looking for a better future opportunity, career opportunity? Then you might want to, access certain mentors where it says, I need somebody I'm focusing on my health currently and I just don't have the time. And you might want a mentor that, it's for your health or some, personal thing that you're going through. And I think the chemistry or dynamics really does matter, right? So as much as, I tell people, it's just like being in any relationship, right? If you're investing in either having, your boyfriend, your husband, your fiance, or whatever the commitment you want to make, you need to invest the time, but at the same time, have your expectations set very clearly, right? I am having this mentor and communicate that very early. So, hey, Yvonne, I'm meeting you as my mentor and I need these 3 things I need to focus on. I need to look for a job, and if you can expand your network, help me. If it's my resume, or if it's, if you can tell me my strengths and weaknesses over time, right? But I think having those specific things that you want to focus, but then be deliberate, because for me to ask my personal trainer, saying, can you help me find a job in the financial industry, might not be the right thing, right? So I think we have to be somewhat thoughtful in this process when you're looking for mentors. And like, what Phyllis, you said is right. I mean, everybody's extremely busy. So make sure that, yes, do the follow-up, but be mindful of time, right? So, I mean, again, sometimes my pet peeve is someone will put in my calendar 30 minutes and they're going out for 45 minutes, an hour. And I'm just like, I don't have the time. I want to help you. So, come in, like you said, specific agenda, what your focus is. And, it's okay. Actually, people get a little bit afraid of, the mentorship. If it doesn't work, it's okay. Find another mentor, right? And be open about it, saying, listen, we've tried a couple of times. Your thought process and mine are not quite aligned. Not because I don't want to be open for feedback, but again, you have to connect. So, be open, be transparent. And it's okay if you fail and find another mentor. I think that's the whole journey of finding the people that you can connect with.
Strategic is so important with that intentionality, right? In terms of thinking those processes through. So thank you for that. Yvonne, did you want to add anything?
They covered it beautifully.
Any more questions? I don't see any in the Q&A.
Can I just say one more thing? If people are interested in mentoring, they can certainly contact me at Conexión, and we can certainly chat a little bit on the phone, and I'll tell them more about what we do at Conexión, because that's what we do is mentoring. And we have an early career program and a mid-career. The early career are millennials. They're distinctly different, by the way. I have to have a quick mentor story. It's a cute mentor story. But this gentleman mentored for us, and he was mentoring a millennial, and the millennial is 25, 26, works for one of the hospitals, and he's delightful, absolutely delightful young man. And his mentor came to me, and I said, well, how's it going with him? And he said, well, it's okay, but he's all over the place. He's all over the place. I just don't know what to do with him. And I said to him, I said, oh my gosh. I said, Mark, when you were 25 or 26, did you know what you wanted to do? He says, well, I knew I wanted to be a leader. And I said, okay, a leader. Okay. Well, did you narrow it down a little bit? He's now working in the insurance business, but it was just so funny because he was just telling us he's all over the place. And then I had another mentor who has mentored for us a lot in the older, he's an executive with one of the big global companies, and he's a great mentor, and he's been mentoring for us a lot. And then I gave him an early career, 20-something-year-old, and again, brilliant young man who's doing neuroscience research. He's brilliant, but he's in his 20s. And so the mentor called me up and he said, Phyllis, I said, how's it going? He said, well, I just want to tell you, he said, he is so different than my older, he said, I haven't mentored somebody this young in a long, long time. And it reminded me what you are doing in your 20s in a lot of instances. He said, this young man is brilliant, and he is brilliant. He's doing brain research. And he said, but he's got like all these different ideas about what he wants to do with his research. And he said, I have to bite my tongue. I keep saying, don't rain on his parade. So this thing about being focused and strategic, there's a little bit of we've learned through the actual living examples that when you're in your 20s, it's really, really clear that you're still doing a lot of, I might want to do this, but I might want to do that. And your mentor needs to be somebody, and like I said, this gentleman was very gracious, and fast forward 2 years later now, he's been actually helping him raise money for a project that he's doing with teens in Puerto Rico. So his mentor has continued to be there for him and watch him grow and mature. So again,
Wow,
it makes a
that's a
difference.
great story. So I don't see any more questions in the Q&A, so I have a question. Of course I do. So the question.
It's Lisa, of course she does.
So, but this will be my last question though, and it might actually end this out. So you might have noticed we're in the middle of a pandemic. It's called COVID-19. So we're in the midst of this. And so I'm wondering if you all could talk a little bit, because, people are really struggling right now. They're struggling to get jobs. They're struggling to stay present. And so could you talk a little bit about some things that you're doing in your own life? One, to, stay sane during these moments and just keep your head above water. But the other things that you're doing, because I know a lot of people are losing their jobs. We have a lot of students who they were applying for internships and they're no longer available. So some of your thoughts about what people can do to, sustain, secure, grow, whatever that is, their career, particularly in this pandemic moment. So I'll start, let you all think. I'm taking care of myself. I got a new puppy. I got a little puppy. So I went out, I got a little stray, and she's super cute, and she's keeping me totally sane. And somebody told me this once, if you want to be a leader, you get a dog, because the dog always loves you and supports you. And it's so true. So, so anyway, seriously, so let's see, I forget who I've had. So Phyllis, let's go with you first. I think that's how I started, and then I'll wrap around.
Okay. So how to stay sane? It changes every few days, every few weeks. In the beginning, we didn't know how long this was going to go on. I think now, at least I have gotten my head around this is going to go on for a lot longer than we all imagined. So, get over it. Again, that's one of my themes here, get over it and see what you can do something. So I pick up different little activities, hobbies. I was telling everybody, I bought this for WGBH, that fundraiser. So back in January, don't ask me what the heck possessed me, but I was watching all those bone broth shows and vegan shows. And then I watched Deepak Chopra. Now I've never gotten into that. Okay. So don't ask me why. The universe acts in strange ways. I bought the high-end package with 2 books, the CDs, and this little handbook. So that's January. All right. So here we are, a month or 2 ago. I switched from whatever I was doing before to entertain myself. I live alone, blah, blah, blah. And I got into Deepak Chopra. So that's one thing I started to do. So I have all the little marks. I'm reading, I'm quoting him, sharing it with everybody I come in contact with. I'm doing that. I started playing. I discovered how to play solitaire on my iPad. So now I'm trying to beat myself. So the last few nights I've been beating myself. I can do it faster, better, whatever. So finding ways to entertain myself. So all that kind of stuff, cooking, recipes, etc. I made a yellow cake. I've never made a yellow cake. I don't even know why I made a yellow cake, but I made one. And then on the helping side, what can you do? Obviously, I'm very fortunate that the organization that I run is an organization that is the intersection of very successful leaders, business people, and very, very amazing, talented Hispanic Latino professionals. And some, like you just said, have been laid off and so forth. So we're in a position to be actively helping them. One gentleman is in Conexión, and he said his mentor has been phenomenal, helping him with introductions, really keeping him really on track and really affirming him. And he is so fortunate, he feels, to be, having a really great mentor that really, really helps him kind of stay on the right path and not get discouraged. So we try to, whenever people come to us, we really do what we can to help redirect them, put them in the right, with the right resources. And last but not least, also working with my brothers and sisters in the Latino community, Latino agencies, convening a group to really come together. How can we help each other? Because it's tough, I agree. And, God bless all of those out there on the front lines. And we do what we can to help them, support them, network, whatever we can do with resources. So that's what we do.
Thank you so much. Yvonne.
I would say, I've been coming into the office throughout the whole pandemic, which a lot of people are like, oh, you're so lucky, for those that are tired of being home. But you always want, so I actually wish that some days I could stay home. Because the kids are home and they see that everyone else's parent is home and I'm not. So So that's been a little hard, but in terms of, I like to think of silver linings that the pandemic has brought. I would say that because I tend to be on the road a lot, that this has, have put a little pause in my life, and I actually get to spend more time at home after work, and sitting down and having dinner with the kids. Everyone was always running around, and we really never got a chance to do that. So it's certainly brought my family closer. I think it's also allowed the kids to see what really matters in life. I've also, I'm sure a lot of people have done this, just connections from the past. Like we had a high school reunion, we had a college reunion, and just seeing, making the time for friends that you were always too busy to connect with. I think that caused, that's certainly something that the pandemic has brought. In terms of, I told my kids, because I keep getting the on board. And I said, look, 20, 30 years from now, when you're an adult and you have your own children, I want you to look back and be able to say, I did this during the pandemic to help, give back.
Yeah.
So I've been forcing them to just think that way. And, they've been doing little things here and there, although small, but hopefully in their mind, it represents some type of notion of helping the community and some type of contribution. In terms of what I've been trying to do is just this initiative around helping small businesses. So it's in pilot phase, but the goal is to help as many minority and women-led businesses as possible in Massachusetts for completely free, giving them, expert advice on how to either, transition to an online platform or how to help their employees through coming reopening, anything that they may need help with. And then the advice that I would give to individuals that are seeking employment is take advantage of this time. Many of the executives that they would want to get in front of are not on planes. And although they're still very busy, they have more time. At least I think and maybe some would say that they're busier than ever, but at least they have, I think, a different mindset right now. They know that people are having a hard time and they want to give back. And mentoring is a way of giving back. So take advantage of having some of these top executives off planes and around and available on Zoom and really know where to go. So take and build those relationships now, so that when things start to open up again, you're top of mind and you've invested some time in building those relationships and seeking opportunities.
I can't underscore that enough. Even I've been on a plane 70% of the time. And so I'm not traveling through October, which is like, just wild to me, but right, this is the time. So take the time. I can't underscore that enough. Alpha.
Yeah.
Last but not least.
Yeah, I think Yvonne actually went in my brain and took pretty much 89% of the stuff I was going to say, to be honest, because one thing is, like you said, I mean, luckily I don't have to go to the office. So I have been fortunate to spend some time with my daughter who's in high school and then my son in middle school. So I've been very, very fortunate to be able to do that, which I haven't been able to do, similar to like everybody else, just, crazy travel schedules, crazy work hours. So, and the commute as well. So doing that, and then doing a lot of baking, because my daughter's in this stage right now. So, from making flan to tiramisu to cannolis to torta, you name it. And, we'll probably gain 50 pounds after we're done with COVID and people won't know who we are, but we're baking really well with sugar. So I think that's kind of a fun activity, as, just the whole family. We do a Friday night, everybody makes a dessert, and it's kind of really, really fun to do that, because we have been so busy. And I think it is, like you said, a little bit of blessing, because we all needed to kind of just have a pause or a reset button. And I think somehow, liking it or not, it has made families much more closer to spend quality time versus, running off to practices, games, debate, whatever the stuff that the kids have activities on. And as parents as well, working on weekends, traveling on Sundays, coming back on Friday night. So I think that has helped. And then the stuff that I've done is I've actually joined the Executive Source Diversity Council within Bank of New York Mellon in the pandemic, because I think what Yvonne was saying, I think it's so important to bring diversity right now. And especially if you think about the financial viability and some of these small firms who don't have liquidity or balance sheet to, keep it steady for next year or 2 or 6 months to be able to get that. So Really, really excited. So maybe Yvonne, I might tap into you and how we can connect, just because, like I said, BNY Mellon wants to also support these small businesses and diverse businesses for sure. And then I've started, I sit on boards, but I've started looking at different boards and the composition. So I'm now sitting on Parks and Trails for New York. Again, I think health is so much important. If you think about all what we learned with the COVID is, it depends on different people. Some people unfortunately make it through this process, some not, and 80 to 90%, given my family's doctors, it's all about health. So really being outdoors and, hiking and taking care of yourselves. And I would kind of instill with my kids because of the PPE and, because they've seen their immediate family members being in the front line, how we can, give back. Either it's, being able to do walks or hikings and collect money and be able to give food to the front line. So, we've been very, very fortunate to be able to do that, which people didn't have time prior to it. So really excited again, like I said, close to the family, spending more quality time than ever. I think last 4 months, I probably made up for the last 10 years that I've lost in the sense of weekends and that. And then second is, how do we give back to the community? And then, like you said, mentor, I think it's a great, great idea. If, executives are right now available, tap into them. They might be able to accommodate much more than they would have maybe 6 months ago or a year ago.
Thanks so much. We got one question, and so it's a 30-second answer for each one of you. I know we've run out of time. So it's a question about, as a woman of color, you felt you were stalled in your career. How did you get the courage to move on because your company wasn't culturally competent? And how did you not burn bridges in doing that? So 30 seconds each. Phyllis.
Like I said before, just get over yourself, just pick yourself up and just move on. And you just have to, it's about what Kip said about the thoughts in your head. Say, I can do this and move on.
Yes. Alpha.
Just have the confidence and have the right support system, right? Get the right mentors and sponsors. I think they're so critical to your success. You need to have people, if you're going to fail, you need people to kind of bump you back in, right? And you need that more than ever. So for me is take the chance, take the risk, but be calculated. Don't just jump off the ledge without having a support system. So for me, have the right mentors, have the sponsors, build a network that can help you, guide you, and give you different perspectives.
Have a parachute and a backup. Yvonne.
Exactly.
Lead, be intentional, rule out the noise, and align yourself with organizations and people that share your values.
Very good.
Absolutely. And I see there's some suggestions even in the chat box about volunteering with nonprofits. And of course, during this virtual time, we can all spend some time reaching out through our remote, whatever it is, whether it's Zoom or Hangout. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm learning more about different technologies. I've been on GoToMeeting. I was on Blue Jeans earlier today. I didn't even know that existed. So thank you so much. This was
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Really
Thank you.
part of this. This is an awesome panel. And looking forward to the keynote.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lisa, Phyllis, Alpa, and Yvonne. I am going to move each of you to an attendee status, and I'm going to move Camille back as a participant. So I just moved her up, and I'm moving you guys over if you don't mind. Just give me 1 second. Thank you, Camille. I see that you're on. Thank you, Camille Lee Jackson. Camille Lee Jackson is the co-founder of Aclaris Therapeutics and a serial entrepreneur. Camille, I'm going to ask you to unmute, and I'm going to move the rest of the folks over to, I'm going to mute them and move them as attendee. So it is, you are on, and I'm going to put my my video on stop video as well as mute. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Josefina. Guys, I hate giving speeches. I love being a panelist and speaking spontaneously. No offense meant to our current panelists, but as a panelist, I can just sit back and react to someone else's actions. So for me, that's the passive way of sharing my point of view with others. But as a result of the movement that is taking over America because of George Floyd's death, I know I cannot afford to be passive in any context or in any part of my life. I must always model action, not passivity. I must always remember not to do anything passively, not even use the passive tense in my writing or my speaking. In fact, my husband's nickname in college was Action Jackson. Now, he was a collegiate scholar athlete, and I'm going to steal his nickname. Although I'm an Ollie, I just became Action Jackson. So here I am giving a speech. But for George Floyd's death, I would have spoken to you about other things at this conference. I would have told you how I succeeded, why I succeeded, how you too can succeed if you just follow my words and actions. But George Floyd changed all of that for America, for me, and for you. I specifically call out George Floyd's death, and not because Ahmaud Arbery's death does not matter to me, or I don't care about Breonna Taylor, or all of the many others, so many others. I call out George Floyd because for Ahmaud Arbery, your lying eyes could tell you that it was in the heat of the moment and it was an accident. And with Breonna Taylor, your tired mind could tell you that it was a terrible mistake. Wrong house, right? Sure, anybody can make that mistake. But with George Floyd, there was no way anyone could misinterpret the cold, casual, hands in his pocket, unemotional, detached and depraved way that white officer killed him in cold blood in broad daylight for all to witness. And so, because of George Floyd, here's what I have to say to you today. We need to take the focus off of our individual success. We have made our mothers proud. Now we need to go sit down and stop talking about ourselves. Instead, it's up to all of us to make our mothers collectively proud of all of us. We have to start living as if any one of us is left behind, we have not succeeded. We have failed miserably. In an effort to stop us from failing, once again, I'd like to share with you some of my life lessons, my Ollieisms, my words of wisdom from an Ollie sister. I have 4 sisters, that is, not lessons. My lessons are not unique. I have taken some of them from other people. I ask that you take my words and do something with them to help you help someone else. Not because I believe in altruism, but maybe because of my East Indian heritage, I believe in karma. The idea, that good or bad actions that you take in this life will determine what happens to you in this life and beyond. I truly believe if you focus on helping others to succeed, all good things come back to you more than you can handle. Okay, so let's get a few things straight. Even if you can sing, you're not waking up tomorrow and becoming Beyonce. Just look at all the great singers on 18 years of American Idol. And even if you're beautiful, you're not going to be the next Iman. Just ask all the former contestants of America's Next Top Model. And even if you could afford tennis lessons and you excelled at them, you are not the next Serena or Venus. And even if you go to Africa and you go on that safari, you're probably not going to meet a prince and become the next Meghan Markle. Even if you know how to do housework, you're probably not going to become the next Real Housewife of any city. We don't need any more Beyoncés, Imans, Serenas, or Megans. The originals are doing just fine entertaining all of us with their talents, and they don't need any copiers. And in my opinion, we don't need any more Real Housewives who are actually not housewives. If you get that straight and you right size your life expectations, you will have learned the first lesson that will help you progress and move not only yourself, but others forward. Now you may ask yourself, what are you left with for motivation? If you're not grinding away for the next big paycheck or the next big promotion or the personal accolades, why do it? You do it so that you can change the trajectory of not only your own lives and those that are close to you, but the lives of others. To me, success is about creating jobs, which create wealth within our communities, which create the foundation and the infrastructure that will support and sustain for the long term the well-being of our people as well as society as a whole. Maybe if the beneficiaries of the civil rights generation, my generation, had stayed focused on community versus individual economic well-being, we would not be marching in the streets once again. And racism, which should have been relegated to being a history lesson for your generation, would not have continued to be an ongoing part of your everyday reality. But unfortunately, here we are again. So I share my life lessons with you in hopes that you take my words and advice not to advance your own personal celebrityness, but instead to become rainmakers, people who create jobs and therefore wealth for themselves and others. Don't become the next celebrity singer. Become the next entrepreneur, which to me is a synonym for job creator, and more importantly, life and soul sustainer. For that reason alone, I am so glad I became an entrepreneur. Remember, as you go forward and you create those jobs for others, please don't fall prey to the bestest syndrome. Don't use the cult of exceptionalism to keep your own people down. Striving to be exceptional was meant to uplift each of us and was not supposed to be used by us or anyone else as the figurative foot on the neck of our own people. True equality for Black and brown people will be when all people, including Black and brown people, stop doing damage to us by hiding behind the cloak of, I have to hire, refer, use, fill in the blank, the most qualified or better than everyone else, Black or brown person. Hiring good enough, being good enough should be enough for our Black and brown candidates, the same as it is for others. Now back to my life lessons. As I mentioned earlier, stop thinking about your own success and focus on creating success for others. Make that your platinum rule for life. To do that, in my opinion, you need 3 things: coffee, Coca-Cola, and lottery tickets. First, coffee. Physical sustenance. Drink all of the coffee or your energy beverage of choice that gives you energy and strength. Coffee, Black with no sugar, was my mother, Ruth Ollie's, first beverage of choice. Coffee, because of my mother, represents to me endurance, stamina, and strength. My mother was mentally ill and still raised 5 children, as well as her grandchildren. Because of her mental illness, she never achieved her full potential. Through her children, she ended up exceeding her wildest dreams. If you told my mother when she was living that she had not succeeded because she did not personally have the degrees and other attributes, that society defines as success, she would have laughed at you. She knew the true meaning of success. It was not about her. It was about us. She left a legacy to be feared because her daughters, with our education and skills, have and continue to excel, and more importantly, strive to bring others along with us. My mother succeeded because she was the force behind and the reason why all of her daughters attained great success in the workspaces of their lives. So pick your physical sustenance, your beverage of your choice, the one that will keep you energized, because you will have to work hard. Nothing is given to us, and that's not changing anytime soon. Just don't make your beverage of choice fantasy Kool-Aid. Women of color in America do not have that luxury. Second, soul sustenance, Coca-Cola. This is my beverage of choice. I drink Coke, not coffee. This is my soul sustenance. It makes everything that happens to me during the day, at the office or at home, tolerable. It is pure, unadulterated sugar. And with that first sip of brown liquid sugar, it reminds me that life can be sweet. It is not all bitter. You see, I needed to be reminded because I know that I'm an outcast in corporate America. And as an outcast, you need luck and the force of personality to sustain you. Remember, what I said about not drinking the fancy Kool-Aid? Don't get wrapped up in being the only, or thinking you are special, or get sucked into this cult of divadom and think that that is how you succeed or how you get into a position of authority. It is not true. You are not special. In addition to your intelligence and talents, you need luck and the force of personality to get you to the next level. Others can have terrible, no personalities and no skills or talent, and yet they somehow seem to succeed. That is not what happens for us. So find that something that sustains your soul or simply makes you feel better so that you get through 100% of your bad days without losing your mind or your soul. Finally, lottery tickets, mental sustenance. Back again to my mother, Ruth Ollie. My mother bought lottery tickets every single day of her life, starting in 1981, when she came to live with me at Harvard Law School, until she died in 2001. Rain, sleet, or snow, my mother bought lottery tickets. She had a son and daughters living and working in different states, and she bought lottery tickets in each of those states. I would like to thank the states of New York, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Illinois, New Jersey, and the great city of Washington, D.C. for your part in sustaining and keeping my mother alive. Lottery tickets, because of my mother, represent to me unbridled optimism and hopefulness. No matter how many times her multi-degreed, highly educated daughters told her the odds of her winning, and even though she never won the big one, she did not allow that to dissuade her. She had optimism and hope on her side. And she knew that it was a possibility, and she believed in possibilities no matter the odds. That is the role of optimism. When you have no one and nothing and no reason to believe, and you still believe. Some people call that faith. Name it what you wish. When I think about my mother, I think of a woman who did not go to college, who spent her adult life in and out of mental institutions, who after 28 years of marriage and selflessly giving of herself to her children and her husband, was committed to a mental institution and left there to be forgotten, out of sight and out of mind. And when I see my mother in my mind, I see a woman who had all of her worldly stuff, all that stuff that we all try so hard to acquire, taken from her by her husband, so that when she came out of the institution, she had no home to go back to. Luckily, her story did not end there. She came with me to Cambridge, ended up taking classes at Harvard, and walked with me across the stage to receive my law degree. She had as much right to walk across that stage as I did, since she had as much to do with me getting that diploma as I did. Ultimately, she died because the medicine that kept her on an even keel mentally was the same medicine that killed her. When I remember my mother, I remember how that woman believed. Oh, how she believed. She exuded optimism all day and every day of her life until she died. That's why I know what I know. I bore witness to it. I watched my mother survive and thrive against the odds. That's how I know that optimism is an essential ingredient to being a success in life and work. I want you to do something for me. Find whatever sustains you, your body, your soul, your mind. Find your physical, your social, and your mental sustenance. And don't forget to bring optimism along with you. Because that is what I believe your generation is showing us all right now. By fearlessly taking to the streets during this pandemic, rather than burning the house down, you have exemplified optimism. Now take that optimism from the streets and march right into the executive suites and boardrooms of corporate America, not to take a seat at the table. Those places are no longer worthy of your talents. They never were. But I want you to go there to obtain the access, the financing, the expertise, and the resources that you need to create your own for yourself and for others, so that you too can be an integral part of entrepreneur, not corporate America. Those are my Ollieisms. Do with them what you will. And thank you for listening to me at a moment in my life when I have come to the uneasy realization that no one else ever did. And on a personal note, I hope my 3 daughters are listening now. I know my son in heaven is. I leave you with the words from this hymn. I'm not a religious person, but I think it is appropriate that this song was a hymn before it became an anthem and then a call to action. Many of you know this song is the Black National Anthem, but more importantly, it is the iconic song of a movement that my generation thought was and would remain in our rearview memory. That has not proven to be the case. I can't sing, but I will try to sing the words that resonate with my soul, and hopefully they resonate with yours. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. For all my sisters, especially my Black sisters, let us continue to march on till victory truly is won. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Josefina.
Thank you, Camille. Those were I have chills, actually. Thank you so much for your words.
Thank you.
Powerful. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We are at the end of the conference. Please connect with us on LinkedIn or Facebook. I am so grateful that you're here. We were able to provide this conference with our sponsors in mind, the TJX companies, Eastern Bank, Biogen, and so many other ones. Thank you again. Thank you to all the speakers. Camille, thank you so much. You're an inspiration to me. And as an entrepreneur, you know how they say mano a mano, entrepreneur to entrepreneur. The journey is a beautiful one. Thank you again. I'm going to close off the session. Have a great rest of the week and have a great rest of the month. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.